You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 383, Kamino Lost. We are at the finish line. It seems like in some ways it feels like it's taken 16 weeks to get through all of these episodes, and other times it feels like this was just a couple days ago that we were talking about the premiere and even talking about what the final this Bad Batch series was going to be. So tonight we're going to break down everything that happened in the last episode, season finale, talk about what we thought about it, get into a little bit of speculation about next year as well, and then just kind of reflect overall on the series. And should be a really, really good show. I'm really excited about this. And to help me bring the excitement is someone sporting the 10th anniversary logo shirt. I just noticed that. I don't know why I missed it earlier, but
Or any the other times I've worn it.
yeah, sure. I think I bring it up every time. How are you doing, sir? This is Jonesy, by the way, if you haven't.
My name's on the screen. Yeah, if you're here for the live chat. Doing well, man. And you know what? It has definitely felt like 16 weeks because it has been 16 weeks.
Yes. Yes. You can't, time is an absolute. That's for sure.
Hey, we have to take a moment though and talk about what you're sporting for your wallpaper today, though.
Oh yeah. Let me see. I'll move out of the way if you can see it. Yeah.
This
So
was-
this is
yeah,
what
go
do you no, give me your thoughts and I'll kind of fill in the details here.
This is by a friend of ours, right?
Not a personal friend. I think she follows the
Well,
show, or at least
follows
we
the
follow
show.
her. Yeah.
Yeah. So she's got it's the Bad Batch with Omega really there at the end of the episode, and they all look like Tamara Mortensen in some form or fashion, which
Yeah.
is the artwork itself and the attention to the detail and the style is phenomenal. It's a little disturbing to see his face and all of the characters, though. I got to be honest with you. And actually, we were talking before the air that it's not Omega is the one that kind of creeps me out a little bit. It's literally everybody else, especially Crosshair's head on his big head on the little body,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is great. But no, I love the attention to detail. I love the style of the art. It's fantastic. But man, it is very weird to see a different face than what we're used to on the characters. But so much fun that people do this whole time. Yeah, and there you go. Zuri Art Online.
Yeah.
At
That's
Zuri,
her.
go check her out.
Yeah, that's her Twitter handle there. But and she's been doing them all season. She does these characters like the Bad Batch characters, and they're all drawn with Tamara Morrison's face. But then she also does other characters as well, like from Marvel and everything else. But she's got some really, really great stuff out there. So shout out to her. And I don't think she knows I'm using this, but I do appreciate the fact that it's there, and you can see her initials there too. So
Yeah, you can see her. You can see her brand right there on the screen.
right on the left. I don't know what year that is. It's all flipped around. All right, well, let's do this. We've got a couple things that we want to cover news wise, and then we'll get into some initial thoughts, break down the episode, and kind of give you our final thoughts, and send you off with some things to think about over the next I don't know, year or so. We'll see
Right.
whenever season 2 comes around. So I'll get a little bit of
Exciting news on the screen front. Yeah.
yes. On the business side of, we've got as you guys know, as part of Earglue Media, we have a sister show called Scream with Ryan C. Showers, and they have recently got their latest episode is actually with it's an interview with one of an author who did a book on the Scream series and went behind the scenes, talked to a lot of the actors, production, film crew, that sort of thing. And that is now available. I think this was we released 2 episodes this last week. So that's first and foremost. Second, shout out to Ryan for his master's degree. I think he's at Penn State. So I don't know.
Yeah.
We didn't tell him we were going to mention it, but congratulations to him. It's nice that we have somebody that's got some higher education on this network, because
Well, it's a good test to see if he actually listens to the show or not, too. This is he didn't know this was part of his dissertation.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah. So congratulations, Ryan. Really super proud of you and happy for you, and good luck he's going to be a lawyer. So he's got
That's pretty crazy.
lawyer school stuff coming up here.
That's fine because we probably need one on staff.
Yeah. Yeah. At this rate, yes. He can deal with all the copyright infringements we seem to encroach upon every single week.
Oh boy, yeah, we need a YouTube specific lawyer.
Yeah. Yeah. Real bad. Okay.
Hey, some disappointing news for you though, because this is actually one of we haven't had a whole lot of game news, right, for Star Wars in a while, and unfortunately, this game Hunters is one of the ones we know the least amount about. Like, we just have no idea what it, and the description that Zynga has for this thing is completely uh, really not helpful. It almost seems like a bit like a Fortnite type of game potentially, but we don't know. And unfortunately, we got bad news that it was going to be delayed until next year. Now, what's interesting about this is that this all came out during the Zynga earnings call, and they said that everything is on target, but we're going to delay it.
Yeah.
So nothing to see here, but we're going to wait.
Everything's fine.
Right.
I don't know. It's interesting too. Like there's the cynic in me says, okay, well, something bad has happened. Skeptic in me thinks, or not the skeptic, maybe the optimist in me thinks that, okay, maybe there's something in here that's going to tie into some other reveal. And so it's all a matter of timing. So the game's still on course to be released, but because of characters are in there that are in there, or maybe something along those lines, they want to hold off just a little bit until we get a big reveal coming up soon. So
Yeah, and I'll be the pragmatist here. It sounds like they want more time to do testing, because it sounds like we're going to get a more extended period of testing throughout the fourth quarter. Now, what's interesting about that is maybe they will have a bit more of an open, not an open beta, but maybe a closed beta to where you'll actually have some people who get early access to it, and we can get a better feel for it. They keep saying to their earnings, their investors, that everything's fine. The early tests have been very positive, but again, we know so little about it. And I really know the only reason why you're super interested in this game is that it looks like it came straight out of the basement with the
yeah, the
logo.
logo. Oh yeah,
So
it looks like
talk,
the cross
talk about
between that.
copyright. Talk about copyright infringement. We need to sick the EGM lawyers on Zynga and say, hey, where'd you get the
Yeah,
inspiration for this? Because Albert Padilla is got some words.
stand
We'll
down.
throw back to last week's episode,
Yeah,
folks.
yeah. Cease and desist on that. The
Right.
logo's pretty cool. It's got this like I don't know. I'm gonna call it synthwave kind of
It's got this
80s
like
vibe.
Spy Hunter vibe. If
Sure.
you remember the Spy Hunter game, it's
Yeah.
what that kind of reminds me of.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
We
So
waxed on about that one.
yeah, I
Sorry.
know. Probably way too long though. We gave you more about that than they did, so you're welcome.
Right. And then a quick
Um,
shout out to Keisha and Twan and Steph, who joined me over for a Bad Batch watch party at 2 a.m. on Friday morning to watch the show. So we got together and we were able to shoot the breeze a little bit before the show and talked a little bit about the episode afterwards. And so it was a lot of fun to be able to do this live on Discord in a voice chat room, and it was pretty neat. So appreciate y'all coming to check us out. Thanks to Albert for standing us up. We really appreciate it, buddy. But
I was on. I totally
you were
spaced
on,
on
you
it.
just
Yeah.
didn't wanna be with us. No, it's all
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
We get it. We don't need your love. We
Oh,
we do need your love, but I'm telling it to myself so I don't feel so
yeah. Yeah, that was there were a few people that were on that night, at least on Discord,
mhm.
that stayed up. And of course, there was a lot of people online in just period that stayed on. I was really hoping that they would pull what was it, season one of Mando, or maybe it was season two. I forget now. One of them they came out like an hour earlier or 45 minutes earlier, and so I was sitting there refreshing that screen with an hour still in.
Right.
Every 15 minutes, I just check in. Then it got down to everybody 10 minutes, and then by the end, I was like every minute refreshing, hoping this thing would come back on. But no, they
Just right on the money.
made us wait till 2 a.m. Central. So thank you so much, Disney. Oh, we've got a new Patreon subscriber. So Kyle Wren has subscribed to the Green Milk tier. So thank
Welcome
you so
back,
much.
buddy.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's right. He's a returning Patreon member. So thank you. He'll be able to take advantage of the comic book stuff that we got going, as well as the bonus episodes each week, and then anything else we can throw at you. So your donations to Patreon, honestly, go a really long way, especially to pay for stuff that we're doing, like with StreamYard and all the other subscription stuff that we host or pay for in order to put the show on. So thank you so much, Kyle, for coming back.
So speaking of Patreon, what is our bonus content gonna be this week?
Well, it's funny that you asked that.
Is it?
So
Oh, can I
well,
maybe you'll let me attend this time.
what's that?
Maybe you'll let me attend it this time.
Oh yeah, maybe we'll see. I don't know, but yeah, for this week, there's let's say there's growing speculation about the ending of this episode. You could even say there was emerging speculation about this episode, or you could say there was a mountain of speculation coming after this episode. And no, so seriously, it's a mounting speculation. We're going to get into the mountain almost literally in the bonus episode today. Later today, you'll get that later this week for our Patreon members, and we're going to get into the whole Mount Tantus, get into Heir of the Empire. I've been putting together all these clues that have been kind of popping up. and some of it's tinfoil. I'll tell you right now, you're going to be like, you're crazy. But if you look at it, there's probably all these little hints that have been laid out that they could possibly be actually revisiting Mount Tantus and that particular storyline that came out of Heir to the Empire. And man, that would be so awesome if they went there. So if you're not familiar with it, we'll get into the details and then we'll kind of talk about certainly how this ties into not only the Mandalorian, I'm sorry, not only the Bad Batch, but other existing shows that are out now, potentially some of the ones that could be coming down the road as well, and culminating in the big event that was rumored or I guess mentioned last year about all the Star Wars television shows kind of coming together. So,
It's
what do you
exciting
think?
time. Yeah, I mean, it's exciting time. I think this is where you're absolutely right. People want expanded universe or legend stuff to be a thing still. It is very much alive, and we continue to see inspiration drawn from that. And I'm going to give you 2 words about what we are going to whose name is going to come up tonight.
Mara Skywalker,
Mara, well, Mara Jade.
Mara J.
Well,
Skywalker.
Mara. Let me give you a third. Mara Jade Skywalker. Everyone's a Skywalker anyway, right?
Yeah,
So it we're just having fun, folks. But yeah, it's really cool that that stuff is not dead, you know. And I'm not saying Mara Jade's a thing, but never know. But it's just cool that we are still going to bring in material that we've had for. Yeah, when did Heir of the Empire come out? 30 years ago?
it
Are
was
we?
92,
Yeah. So we're right
something on
at
there.
30 years ago. Yeah. So incredible that we're still drawing inspiration from these things, and we've got a long way to go. And a character who has been rumored and everybody wants to see on screen, Thrawn. And I have some things to say about that. Gasp! Look at that, Star Wars Insider. I still remember that cover, the one with the Mara Jade on there. Or I
Yeah,
can't remember the actress's name, who was the kind of the poster child for Mara Jade, like visually.
yeah. This was issue 47 where she's on the cover, and I can't even
I always
remember.
actually, it always made me laugh. I'm sorry, we've really got to get in the show here because we got a lot to talk about. But she always reminded me of Reba McEntire.
She does look like Reba McEntire. Yeah, if you're unfamiliar with Reba McEntire, she's a prominent country
Country.
singer and actress. I think she's done a lot of different things now, but
Yep.
yeah, but she was pretty big in the 90s and 2000s.
She's still
She is still pretty big, yeah.
even
Everybody
on
loves
TV
her.
show named Reba. You don't get a
Oh,
TV
that's
show with your
right.
own name on
I
there.
forgot she even did that,
It was
honestly.
yeah, it was good wholesome TV.
All right. I'll take your word. All
The
right.
one the one part of television you haven't
Yeah,
seen?
exactly is the Reba McEntire show. I think I've seen a couple episodes, but we're going to get into the basement here, so let's not do that.
Okay.
Okay. With that, that's all we got for news. And let's jump into this episode. So, Jonesy, okay, first off, there's one thing that I was going into this episode. I gave some feedback that I wasn't exactly thrilled that they broke away at the end of the second episode. It felt like they just needed to kind of go right into it. And I mean, I could go either way. If I had my preference, I would have liked them just to stay on it and did, the final episode, 15 episodes. The last one's an hour long, right? Or 40, 50 minutes,
Yeah,
whatever that is, right?
right.
But how did you feel, I guess, coming in and seeing this episode and picking up where it left off at? Was there a break for you in any way?
No, I guess I'm conditioned to expect these two-parters these days, and I felt like, I mean, they really did just pick right up. It could have been, and I'm with you, it probably should have just been 1 episode. I think it would have flowed just as well without the extra week. And, I mean, if we're talking about initial impressions of sorts as well, this episode had a lot, man, it was really tense and a lot of intensity and a lot of tension. But there wasn't a whole lot moving. There wasn't a whole lot of story into it. And I'm not saying there was none, because there was some really great dialogue within all of this, but
Yeah.
75% of it was just escape from Alcatraz type of thing, right?
Hmm.
Just trying to get out, and totally expected this to be the case. We didn't expect them just to make a quick escape and then figure out something from there. This made a lot more sense. But yeah, I'm with you. I think an hour-long finale, with both parts would have made a lot more sense. I think it would have really gone well together, and it would have we wouldn't have had as many. I don't say we have complaints, but I think it would have just flowed a little nicer. It would have just been seamless, and we would have been satisfied with how that went. I think the reason why we didn't get that, though, is because all of that tension, all of the actual climax, all happened in the first half. And if you look at the second half of this, when it was all while there was more tension and buildup, there was not that true pinnacle moment where something happened, you're like, "Oh god, everything has changed."
Yeah.
'Cause we already had that. And
Right.
so now we get a little bit of that with the characters, but what we're used to seeing, though, in an episode, not so much this time around. What about you?
Yeah, I would. So I agree. And I actually went back and I was gonna. I don't know how to do this legally, but I wouldn't cut the 3 episodes up and stream them together and put a little break in between all 3 of them. And I'll say that when you watch the first one, War Mantle, and then flow into or was it Return to Camino? What
Yes.
is this second before I
Yep.
get drawn blank? Yeah. So if you that one doesn't flow very well because you kind of need that time to sink in because at the end of the first one, they go back to Sid's. And when I
Mhm.
cut it, it literally ends with Hunter and Crosshair, and then it picks up with a quick, like 2 second shot of the Marauder in hyperspace, and then it jumps right back into Hunter and Crosshair is coming in to see him again. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So you almost kind of needed that break to account for him walking away and giving him time to be there by himself, as well as give the Bad Batch time to go meet with Sid, drop off Gregor, that whole thing, right? So that one didn't feel really good. But when you watch the second one and the third one linked together, and you remove the pause, it's actually really. I mean, your point is well taken because it does feel like the big moment in those last 2 episodes was definitely the fall of Camino. There was a lot of tension that was built, and I loved it. Suspense. It was a thriller, beginning to end. It was just like it was almost serialized in that there was one bad thing would happen, and then the next one would happen, and then one bad thing, next one would happen, and when it didn't feel like we were building up to anything other than them getting off the planet, which is
Right.
significant, surely. But I think the big reveal at the end of the third episode was really us seeing Camino or not seeing Camino. How about that? And just seeing the smoke and then the sun. However, that to me was just kind of an after effect, right? It was the end result of the big climactic moment that we had in there. So during at the end of the second episode. So from that perspective, it did feel like it peaked somewhere at the end of the second episode,
Right.
and certainly had us on the edge of the had me on the edge of the seat throughout the entire episode. But it never really jumped back up, and I don't think we didn't get a big finale send off that I was expecting or hoping for. That's
Right.
not a bad thing. I know there's been a lot of discussion about, okay, well, a lot of these Star Wars television series, uh, a lot of them didn't do this at the end of the first season, and that's completely fair and totally true. There was a lot of folks that felt like we didn't have to have a cameo, we didn't have to have a death, and I don't disagree with that either. I mean, the story is the story, and as long as it's great, right? But it just didn't feel like we didn't have that. So not feedback. I mean, it feels kind of weird. I don't know. I still haven't. I mean, we're 3 days after the episode premiered. I'm still trying to wrap my head around how I feel about the episode, other than to say that I enjoyed it and I love the suspense, and I can go on and on about the animation and the sound effects and the
Mhm.
pacing, and I mean, all that was just perfect. So from that perspective, it was a great season finale. I thought.
I agree. Again, it was just you didn't have that real emotional moment like we expected to have. Now, the very end of this episode was very emotional. I don't want to take
Sure. Yeah.
anything
Yeah.
away from
No.
it.
No. Yep.
It really had that. But again, we really expected something else to bring it a little over the top, right? It just give it that next nudge. And I got to be honest, this is kind of what we expected. And there's a lot of criticism on the Disney effect and whatnot there that they didn't take that leap. They didn't make that extra bold decision to kill off a character or something like that, especially with the season two. But I think those are always the times you can ask the audience to take that leap with you and to generate that excitement going into the next season. And I'm not saying I'm advocating a death in the character because I know you ran a nice little poll for us there before we got the episode started for the official death watch of episode 16.
Hmm.
So maybe you can share some of the results of what we were expecting from the masses. But I think it's just one of those things of it's hard to give feedback because it's not our show. We didn't write it. We're not the ones creating the characters and having a vision for where we want them to go overall and at the end of the day. And so I giving feedback does seem a bit derisive at times in that regard. But at the same times, I think as a viewer and as an enjoyer of material, we do have our right to feel certain ways or to think we would have enjoyed one thing more than the other. But to say that their vision was wrong or anything is that's just not right, and that's not what we're here to do, at least. But
Yeah.
why don't you tell us a little bit about the poll? So what were people expecting coming into this show as far as were we gonna lose someone?
Yeah, I threw a poll up that just said, "Look, if we're going to lose someone, I'm paraphrasing, but if we're going to lose someone in the season finale, who's it going to be?" And the options I gave everyone were Hunter, Crosshair, Wrecker, or Other. and the number of people that joined in the poll, it was a pretty good number, but 45% said it was going to be Crosshair. I think
Yep.
that was kind of what everybody felt like, okay, he's going to have the redemption arc. There was a lot of people that were on board with that. And then Hunter and Wrecker were both at about 18% each. And the other was at about 18%. So you had a three-way tie for other. And other, I would say predominantly was no one. Like no one was
Yep.
going to die. So pretty evenly, I guess, separated there for those three. But yeah, I think everyone was kind of expecting if anyone was going to die, it would be Crosshair. So
You know what's really funny? So I was one of the other nobodies, but for a moment, I hesitated. I was like, "I'm gonna put AZ." And while I was watching the episode,
yep,
I
I
was like
know.
I was like, "Holy cow, it's going to be AZ."
Yep.
But they couldn't even go that far, though. You could at least kill the droid off. It was like in Rise of Skywalker. We were teased that 3PO was gonna make the ultimate sacrifice, and we were gonna lose him forever, and then, of course, we didn't quite go that far, but
Yeah.
AZ made it, folks.
Yeah,
Spoiler
it
alert.
was touch and go there for a few minutes, but yep,
It was, yeah.
made it
Well,
through.
it did make for a nice moment, though, for to give you, things to speculate about Crosshair, and I thought it made me confused about where Crosshair was actually gonna go at the end, so I thought it was really important that we have that moment and that type of story arc happen, and just to see where it put Crosshair at and what we could expect from him, only for him to, again, really not even take a left turn, but really just continue down the path that he had already set and keeps telling us, "Look, no, this is my path. This is my path." Even though everyone, including potentially maybe Hunter and the guys, assume that at some point he'll make a different decision. Although I think we got pretty clear throughout the episode that they've lost a bit of hope in Crosshair altogether.
Yeah. The other quick thing, and I promise I'll make this quick. The other thing was, and I think I said it in the comments on Discord right at 2 a.m. or right when the episode was over for me. I said this makes sense now why they released the announcement, or they made the announcement that season two was coming up prior to the last 2 3 episodes or whatever that was. Because if this had ended the way it did, right, and we didn't have any kind of explanation or any kind of heads up that we were going to have a season two, I think a lot of people would have been upset because you
Yeah,
got Crosshair being left there. You had so many things that went unresolved that we've been talking about. Oh, it's good. They're waiting until the last episode, waiting the last episode of the last arc, which never happened. And and especially sending in Nala Se into this mountain and all of that, and showing the patch. I mean, there was just things they were telegraphing there, right?
right.
That I think if had they not announced it, sure, it would have been cool when we got the big announcement, whenever saying, "Oh, we've got a season two coming." But this at least left us with like, okay, a lot's unresolved. Didn't go exactly the way we wanted. Nobody died. They teased us throughout the entire episode that someone was going to die, and none of that ever happened. But at least we know we've got a second season coming, and so hopefully we'll get some answers from that. To me, that makes more sense now. And I know there were some people saying, "Well, it's taken all the spirit, all the intensity out of the final arc." And yeah, I think it probably that was the reason for it. So
Right.
we got that. All
Let's dig
right,
into it then.
what's that?
Let's dig into it.
Yeah, sure. We're gonna start with the beginning. It's a very quick shot. It is like something that I think is taught in officer school in the Imperial Academy. It's like how to stand on the bridge with your back to the camera and both of your arms behind you. I've been collecting all the images. I'm going to post this at some point on social media, but I've been collecting all the images with characters that are standing in that pose with their arms behind it, and I'm just going to put them all in there in a big kind of collage. But it was a very familiar pose for us, right?
Right.
Seeing Rampart standing there in that. I called it the Imperial Admiral stance because what else can you call it?
Very accurate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Um,
it's also a Grand Moff stance, I suppose.
yeah, he does it. Yeah, he's. I've got quite a few shots with him. Thrawn did it in Rebels and yada yada yada. So we'll see. But the part that I think got to a lot of people was that poor clone trooper that came in and provided
Mhm.
the update that Camino had fallen. I mean, you could hear it in his voice, even when he first walked up, his first initial lines or whatever that is. You could hear he was already kind of like shaking, and then by the time he delivers that line, I mean, you don't need to see what's underneath the mask, right? The
Yeah,
tone,
body
the ways that
language.
it, yeah, exactly, was everything. But that was pretty tough to swallow, I'd imagine, for somebody like him.
It was, and I mean, I like that we got to see that there were other clone troopers still on the bridge as well,
Hmm.
down in the trenches. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
they're not replaced yet all the way, and it was very emotional for them to have a clone trooper deliver that update. But yeah, the sullen shoulders, the slumping a bit, and just you could just see that he just wanted to shake his head and be like, what have we done? Like, what are we
Right.
doing?"
What did we just
And
witness?
right, exactly. And again, this it's just more potential discontent, filling into the ranks, and this is why. And again, we didn't really get a complete resolution of the clones, so of what they're at or what their story is, because presumably the facility was empty.
Hmm.
So it leaves a lot to be answered moving forward about what you do with the existing army or what has been done with the existing army if something has been done.
Yeah. Yeah, he was us at the end of the last episode or the second episode of this arc, right? I mean, in the way we felt and watching and witnessing that, I mean, he was just kind of an extension of a lot of that for us too. So, but I do wonder, why he would feel that way. No, I'm not. Let me back up. I understand why he feels that way, 100%. But I wonder if there's anything to do with the chip, because you got to think some of these clone troopers, when they turn on their Jedi, we saw it. We saw it firsthand with Rex. He was struggling with it, right? It impacted him that much. And then yet others that were probably closer to Jedi as well. So is that and this is maybe be rhetorical, but is that an indicator that again we have something going on with the chip, that he's just not, following straight orders, and that chip is inhibiting his emotions and his ability to have, to feel anything, right? He's not the robot. He's definitely come up there and he's bothered by what he saw. He's probably questioning whether that was the right choice. But is that the chip, or is it, is it wearing off in some way again here, or is it just, I don't know. I mean,
Yeah, it's a tough question, and it probably is a bit rhetorical in that nature. But I think some of it, though, is if you've seen enough things happen over the course of many months. I guess we could call this season has been over the course of many months, maybe not quite a year, but maybe 6, 8, 10 months, something like that, at
yeah.
least. If you see enough things happening, enough things going on, at some point, you're not following a specific order. You're just feeling the way you feel. And even though you're forced to feel to do the order, what's less clear again, and I think this is maybe where you're going with it, is it does it completely change your behavior and change your ways of thinking and feeling? Or is it literally like, no, you're just forced to do the order. You don't have a choice, even though you really don't want to do or you really do question it. Because we've seen even in the movie and stuff, we did see, you know, the clones look at each other first before doing it. Now we're not given a whole lot of, we're not really given a whole lot into that they're thinking about disobeying the order or anything. But I think sometimes you get that initial order and you're like, wow, this is weird, but something must have happened somewhere and we need to act now and act decisively, and that's what we're programmed to do. They don't know that part, but just beyond that, though, if you've seen enough of it over time, maybe it's wearing off, or maybe you're just like, okay, well, there's not an order in any of this stuff, and I am really just I don't know what else to make of this. I don't feel like
Hmm.
this isn't the army I was in, so now I don't know what to do with my life, but I'm gonna still keep doing what I'm told because that's what soldiers do.
Yeah.
Not good soldiers, but that's what soldiers do. As
Right.
Crosshair points out to this in this episode.
Yeah. Tawan says he was shook, and Sports 101 Gaming says, I think it's due to the chip wearing off. We have seen it with Hauser on Ryloth with the clones. And yeah, I mean, it does feel like this is another example of that. And this can't bode well for the Empire, right? I mean,
Right.
Operation War Mantle, like, I think we talked about this already, but like, on paper, it sounds great, right? We're starting to see now that it's the implementation and the rollout of this plan. Okay, yeah, there's probably some short-term benefits, but I think there's some long-term downsides to this, and I think that's going to start surfacing hopefully maybe in season 2, and this gets us going on further. Well, we'll come to this in a second, but what happens to the clones, right, in canon now? We know what happened in Legends, and are we going to see something a little bit different? Are they going to diverge from where that went to from the Legends perspective? So
Right.
the only other thing, I know, man, we've taken like 10 minutes on this like 30-second piece of the show.
I'll start it with a pose.
I'll start with the pose. But I got a question too around. He says all cities have been destroyed, or all cities have been destroyed,
Yeah.
right? Is
Yeah.
it? And that, I know there was some debate. Okay, so was it? Did they have other venators around the planet throwing, shooting these down, or was it just all the cities with cloning technology or related or associated that have been destroyed at this point?
I think if you're gonna do it, you do it right, and you wipe the entire race and culture off the face of the planet.
Because that feels like genocide or xenocide, I guess, in some way.
Yeah. Oh, but I mean, that's what the Empire is, right? I mean, we
Hmm.
know that they're all a bunch of xenophobes because the Emperor. I mean, at least this was established in in Legends, right?
Legends, yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, that they wanted humans only, and they didn't want any kind of other alien races. And we've not seen a whole lot to combat that in the current canon. As we've gotten closer and into the Imperial days, where we don't see a lot of diversity across species or races or anything like that, or alien type of species, you know.
Hmm.
So it's we do at least have some racial and gender diversity of sorts, but not across alien species at all.
Yep. Okay, well, at that point, we get back over into this beautiful, horribly, scene of this destruction, right, of Camino. More
Mhm.
of the explosions, more of it falling down. Again, it's horrible to witness, but absolutely stunning to see. And there was I forget what the Joe, what's his name? I forget the guy's last name now. He's the visual effects director for Lucasfilm. He had posted something just a couple hours or maybe even minutes before the episode aired, and he said, "Turn off all your lights and turn up the sound." And that was the only
Yeah,
clue he gave. And so obviously everybody clued in. Okay, well, sounds like it's going to be a very dark episode, like literally dark, and it was. I think
yeah.
there was, for the most part, this was a very dark episode, but he was right. The way they were able to put in different shades of blacks and grays and use that to still not, I mean, because they're underwater, right? And power's
Mhm.
going out, and they had a way to do this visually. They just found a lot of creative ways with the sparks and the explosions and flashes of light all at the same time. That had to have been just, I mean, I can't even like wrap my head around how much time that took and the amount of time and effort that went into the visual effects here to show us this. But
Right.
what we got, the payoff, I think, was absolutely spectacular, beginning to end. But it ends with them finally getting separated as this thing's going down. You've got Omega, AZ, and Crosshair kind of split in between this door, and the rest of the group's on the other side. But I did like the way they cut the sound out too, like a
Mhm.
couple times when the explosions went off. So I mean, it was almost like a very immersive kind of experience in watching a lot of this, which I thought was awesome.
I really expected them to really play that up where I really thought this episode would be very, very light on music, to where I kept waiting for it to be more silent for more extended periods of time. And we've
Hmm.
seen this in war movies. I think we saw this in Clone Wars a couple of times as well, right? But it really never happened quite like that. The music did keep coming back in. It was very subtle, and it did add to the intensity and the excitement of the episode. Make no
Yes.
mistake. But I was really the power of silence and the power of just sound environment rather than or the environmental sound rather than music and effects and things like that, or at least, crazy effects, really can be extremely powerful not to have it and just to live in that moment with the characters. And for the times that they did that, you really felt drawn into the scene even more. You don't need all of it to feel like you are in that same peril type of situation. You can still feel it and just have absolute silence with it, which I thought was golden. I was really glad they did make that tweet. Unfortunately, I had to watch this on an iPad to start, so I didn't get to I didn't get to crank up the brightness and look at all the amazing detail. And it was very, very dark to try to see this episode. So if you've only seen this on a mobile device or something like that, you really do owe it yourself. Go and try to put it on your TV or through one of your streaming boxes or a PlayStation or Xbox or something like that, so you can see this in a bigger screen, turn the lights low, maybe turn the brightness up a little bit once you've seen the episode, and then go through and try to pick apart some of the detail because there's a really lot of visual eye candy within this whole thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially, man, even just the sparks and the way that they
Yeah.
glow in the dark, it's just incredible.
Hmm. Yeah. No, I mean, this is. I'd be shocked and surprised if this one doesn't get nominated for something, and then even more, probably more so for if it doesn't win. I don't know what it would be competing up or competing against going into
Yeah.
next year's awards for whatever, but this has got to be up there. I mean,
It always
this has got to have people's attention.
right. It always confuses me how they pick a specific episode. If you're looking at this entire season, you could probably pick. We got 16 episodes. You could probably pick at least a quarter of them, if not half of them,
Hmm.
for visual effects alone.
Hmm.
Just for lighting and everything else, that would be hands down some of the best animation we've seen, especially out of a television show.
Right.
And it's just incredible that they're able to deliver this week in and week out for an entire season like this.
Yeah, we'll get into the. I think there's a particular segment that I thought the sound was just mind blowing. I wouldn't put these headphones on and listen to it, and it's crazy. But we'll come to that here in a second. So so back to the episode. They're separated. Omega immediately notices that Crosshair's down. He's pinned under this debris. And at the same time, the room's starting to fill up with water. So this is the first of several moments where things got really tense, you know? And every time it did, it felt like, okay, here it comes. Someone's going to die or get on real close to near death. And the minute it started happening, I thought, well, what if he does drown? Like, is it going to be Omega? Are they going to get to her in time? Are they going to have to resuscitate him? Right. This is all the stuff that's going through my, and it kept happening, which I love because I was literally on the edge of my seat, wondering and praying and fearing and cheering that somebody would die. No, I'm kidding. And it never happened, but this was a very tense moment. And we got to see Omega like step up, right? In a lot of ways, like and this is just one of three times I think in total where she did this, where she just was very selfless about things, right? She wasn't thinking about herself. She was thinking about AZ. She was then thinking about Crosshair. Went underwater, tried to get to the door, couldn't do that. She came up with the plan of shooting that thing down, told Daisy to kind of press up with his repulsors or whatever to kind of break it apart. She pulls him, the full grown man, up to the top where he can breathe a little bit better, where there's more air. And then she goes back again back to try to open the door up again. So this showed a lot of courage that I think we've definitely seen from her, right, throughout the series. But, where she was in this episode was kind of another level in terms of maturity for me.
Yeah. I mean, and she's like Aquaman here because swimming with boots and pants and stuff on is no easy feat, folks.
I I don't know want to know why you know that, but okay.
Well, have you ever tried?
No, I have not.
Have you ever done it with swim shoes? Like just with swim shoes, it's hard enough. Anyway,
Yeah.
but no, it is. It speaks to her character, and I love that when she started using the bow on it. And Crosshair's like, what are you doing?"
Right.
But it was great that she had the ingenuity. Like, okay, you do this. I'm gonna go up here and try to free it in any way I can, because he wasn't going to survive. There was no way he could do it. But again, it speaks to her selflessness that not only is she willing to sacrifice or willing to do everything she can for one of her brothers, even for someone who is really at this point doesn't really deserve it from her respect, I think at least. But that's the right thing to do. So that's what she's going to do. And then yeah, going down there, and not that she has any ability to make any influence, but hey, every little bit helps as they're trying to wedge this door open. And you got to try. And she's just going to keep trying and keep trying. It's very much we talked about Rogue One. It's that same type of mentality. You take one chance until all the chances are spent, right?
hmm Yeah, and this just I'm sure they did this on purpose. I give them probably way too much credit. Maybe I don't. Maybe not enough. But it is the inverse of the final rescue from Crosshair, right? You've
hmm
got Omega underwater with AZ, and he's saving her. Well, this is just the opposite. It's Omega saving Crosshair and uh, AZ underwater. So it was kind of cool that this is how the first one we got as opposed to the last one. I'm sure that
Right.
was all done on purpose. But
Sure.
nevertheless, the doors are opened up. They come flooding through like fish. I like how it was Echo that just kind of puts his foot out like, I'm not really going to help this guy. I'll stop him, but that's about all he's going to get.
Was that
Uh,
Echo? I thought it was Hunter.
I think it was Echo. Well,
Okay.
I don't. At the helmet is what I was looking at. So
Okay.
it was again dark. So I could be wrong, but I think it's funnier if it is Echo rather than Hunter. But it makes more sense.
That would be
Probably.
amusing. Yeah, it makes more sense if it's Hunter, but it would be funny if it was Echo.
Yeah, because that guy, I'm sure he just wants to punt that guy's head right off at this point,
Right.
given everything that's happened. So,
Right.
um, and this is this is the moment where Hunter tells Crosshair that, hey, the Empire ditched you, right? They left you for dead, and we're all kind of in this together. I mean, this is kind of a
Well, yeah, because he
repeat
was
message.
blaming. Yeah, Crosser was blaming Hunter for what was going on. What did you do now?
hmm
Like, dude, you've been with me the entire time. What'd you think I did? Nothing.
Nothing. Yeah, I didn't do anything about this. Um, and of course, there's everything's falling around them literally, and
Right.
they decide that they're going to head off. And again, this scene here, this really quick scene gets repeated at the very end, where you have everybody run off except for two characters, and it's Hunter and Crosshair. I'm sorry, Crosshair and Omega, and they're the only two that are standing there, and they're kind of just both trying to figure out whether or not. But and I get it here. I have a problem with it at the very end of the episode, and I will share that, and I'll share my personal thoughts because I can kind of see it both ways there.
Mhm.
And really, I'll share my feedback at the very end about where I had the biggest problem with this episode. But here, Hunter's got to. He's looking out. He's the squad leader. They've got to get out of there. So it makes sense that they would just kind of leave Crosshair because what else is he going to do? He has nowhere else to go but to follow them, or just you know kill end his life and just stay where he's at. So they run off. Obviously, he follows after Omega, which I think she was just kind of standing around thinking, why are we leaving? He's not coming. What's going on here? Right? She's still trying to figure out what's going on, and she starts kind of putting all these pieces together. By the time they actually sit down in the Nala Se's room, but yeah, they eventually just they take off at this point, and all around him, Tapioca City, uh, is kind of falling apart. The clone, the tubes, they go right by that area, which again was kind of just shocking and jarring to see that whole thing filling up with water. I mean, they all stop and pause. I mean, they've probably seen this room a million times, and just the shock value, right, of seeing
Yeah.
all of that happen. Um, but it was very sad for sure. However, the city then begins to kind of shift. Uh, Underwater, right? It went from a kind of level position and it's starting to tip over and kind of go down. And this is Tuan had said he said it in the episode when we were watching it that night, but he said it again here. This felt like Titanic, like 1997 all over again, right? We
Right.
all kind of knew the physics that would probably be involved in some of the stuff because we were so open or exposed to those during the Titanic movie. But it was one of those same situations where, yes, as water starts to fill in, as air starts to move, weight gets redistributed, the whole thing starts shifting, and as that started to shift down, this is where I felt like the sound was just out of control. Like every little bit of debris that was coming down in this next scene here had its own like special effect, and they did an amazing job with like the spatial. Uh,
Right.
I don't know what that technique is called or the term's called, but spatially, where all of these objects are. I mean, you could close your eyes and you can just hear them and feel them whirling right by you as it was happening. It was
Yeah.
great stuff for the sound team.
Spatial audio, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, it just makes I mean, it's and again, it's just we're waiting for we've seen all the shots go through the water and into the support structure. We've seen other parts of the city collapsing into water, and yeah, I mean, it's just another obstacle they've got to do. You're basically gonna go start going vertical into the thing, and are you gonna be able to hold on long enough to hit the bottom before you level out? Or hopefully you level out when you get down there and you can but again, it continues to speak to the dire situation that they were in, and that just kept getting worse. It wasn't I like that it wasn't an easy escape. It wasn't just, "Okay, we got to the tubes, now we're safe," and we could just have this pensive moment, we're all quiet. It's like, no, every moment is a fight and a struggle. You could argue that by the time you got to the 3rd one, you got to the beast or something, it was just like, "Okay, come on. We know it. We get it. It's kinda hard." With but I mean, it just speaks to, like, it isn't a as critical as we've been at times about them resolving things too quickly, while we still resolved it in the same amount of time here, it wasn't a quick and easy solution or wasn't just get to this one area and everything's fine. No, you're on the bottom of the ocean now. You've got to figure some things out and you're going to be susceptible to any of the things that can happen down there or any of the wildlife or anything else we get to.
Yep, and this was another scene that again, right? We just had the last scene that was pretty tense. Now we've got this one where Omega's holding on with one arm. At one point, AZ gets hit and he loses power. If you can see his eyes go out, and
Mhm.
she reaches down literally at the last second, grabs his
Oh,
arm. So she's holding on to him. She's holding
that
on to
thing's got to
herself.
be, an AZ's got to be a
Oh yeah,
heavy.
exactly. He's not. He's probably not light. Um, but yeah, so this was like again a second. This was a second moment where she saved somebody, and there's still one more coming up here in just a little bit. But definitely pivotal in all of this. Of course, that all levels out. They get straight, and the next scene takes us right into the old barracks. Um, and I love that Record came in, was kind of proud, boasting about
Yeah.
the
The scoreboard.
scoreboard on the side there, and it was an opportunity for Crosshair to kind of take a cheap shot at him, and
Yeah.
saying that, yeah, look, how
All
awesome
those
were
missions.
we, and you threw it all away, right? Which I mean, he says they threw everything away, or they threw everything away, given everything they had done, or they threw it all away, given even with everything they had done together. And for him, it was all for nothing. Like Hunter is like it's so black and white. You know what I mean? It's like, well, what good is any of that when you guys have decided to head off and you guys have left what we did or what we were? We were a squad, we were a team, we were soldiers, and we don't have any of that anymore. So
Right.
it speaks to a larger problem that we've identified with Crosshair here in how he kind of sees the where things are going and where they've been and all of that. So
This is where we got one of the more important pieces of dialogue too, or at least one of the first really important pieces when he talks about soldiers following orders.
mhm.
But Hunter, finally just says it outright. But to blindly follow them just makes you a pawn. And Crosshair wants to have Crosshair wants to have purpose, but he also doesn't want to be used. He still wants a certain degree of freedom, I think, and within reason. But he
Sure.
want
Yeah.
and if you don't have freedom, you don't have purpose. If you don't have purpose, you don't have freedom. There's a certain amount of connection between those two. Now, I'm not to say that you have to have absolute freedom to have purpose, but the freedom to choose what you want to do and to say, this is what I'm going to devote myself to is still a choice. And you still have to have that freedom of choice for you to be able to enjoy it, I guess, so to speak. And I don't know if Crosshair just really enjoys what he's doing or he's like, well, no, this is what I'm best at, is what I was bred for. I just can't believe that he would be one of the few at this point that still has that really firm, clean line that I was bred to just fight and die, and I have nothing else to give. I can understand if that's the only thing he understands, but to say that that's the only thing he could ever want in life, just to die, I still just have a really hard time believing that. And I think we get enough of a pause from Crosshair in this scene, where it gives you at least this suggestion that maybe that's going to start chipping away a little bit at him, to where because you do get a little more conflict from him as the episode goes on,
Yeah.
and you still see him do you know, kind of right things, that make it he's not a terrible person altogether. We could debate that he's a pretty terrible person at this point, uh, again, it's not that there seems like there is some sort of conflict with him somewhere beyond just, "This is my family," type of thought.
Yeah. A lot of times I boil this down to like alignments in Dungeons and Dragons. I know that sounds
Right.
terrible and weird,
No,
but
it makes yeah, that's total sense, yeah.
but yeah, he's kind of floating in that whole, you know, chaotic
Yeah.
neutral kind of
Are you k
space.
right.
You know what I
You get
mean?
a
Where
good, neutral, bad.
yeah, I mean he's kind of he's in it for himself. Like I think in his mind, it's all about he wants to stay with the empire because it gives him purpose, but at the same time,
Right,
he demonstrates in this episode quite a few times that he sees himself as the superior. Like they are the superiors. Even when he's talking to Omega a little bit later, right? When he says that makes that comment about just because you're a clone doesn't mean you're like them or you're part of them or whatever that was, right? So
right,
in his mind, I think he feels like I've got free agents here. I can really do whatever I want to. I'm just going to go join these guys because they're in power and I can kind of decide what I want to do. And if they don't like it, I'll show them kind of thing. I don't think he realizes and what we know, right? He doesn't have the context of what we know and doesn't realize that there's a little guy called, Sheev Palpatine, who is really the big fish in the lake, right? Or the larger fish here. And so that does have some there's an end to that, right? There's a limit, there's a ceiling in terms of how far and what he's going to be able to do. But in his mind, I think he feels like he is kind of the superior being. And so maybe that some of that is why he feels like he really wants them to come along. But you're right; it feels like it's starting to chip away. I think he definitely has some reservations about whether the Empire was doing this intentionally or not. He plays it off like, oh, they're just following orders, right? It's no big deal. But
right.
I think in the back of his mind, yeah, he knows that, okay, they did try to kill me and they did try to bury me. And even though, yes, it was part of the mission and that was the mission, there's always an inherent risk in going on these missions. Didn't feel right. And I think
Right.
that's credit to the team for kind of showing him that a few times here.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't have the total perspective that we do, but at the same
Right.
time, he is getting some. He
Mhm.
continues to get more of it, whether or not he chooses to believe any of it. But I think you're right on the money. I think his inability to get over his superiority complex over everybody, and it's just to cover up whatever insecurities he has with things, of probably not wanting to admit that, yeah, your purpose is pretty much gone because as soon as you're not useful, they're going to put you out to pasture. He's just going to be like, well, it's just not possible. But as soon as you start being so inflexible rather, to where you can't start to see your own limitations, but B, like what's real and what your true situation is is the day that you're completely lost. And unfortunately, what it's going to come to at some point is that it's going to be too late for you at some point. It's where you just get so far down that road that your path at that point has been predetermined, and it's not going to be a happy ending. I mean, and this is why we get a lot of these type of tragic stories sometimes where I don't want to believe it, I don't want to believe it, and then at the last minute they decide to you know make a different decision and it costs them their life. But really, If you just get over yourself for 5 minutes and just listen to us, spend a week with us, we'll show you the galaxy. You know, we'll be your Aladdin. We'll show you the world,
Oh,
and we'll just
jeez.
you like that?
No, don't do that. I would.
You do it. You do it
I
every
do it
week,
every
man.
week. I know. I know. You do it, and I give you grief. So let that be a lesson to you. No, it's. I mean, honestly, Tex says it best later when he says he's severe and unyielding. Right?
Yeah.
He doesn't want. He's not
Oh,
gonna. He's not gonna
this
give
was
in.
so great. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll get to that. That's in the next scene
Oh,
here, but we're
yeah.
not there
That was
yet.
one
But
of my
yes.
that was one of my favorite scenes.
Oh, absolutely. So they're going back and forth. Crosshair tells Hunter, "Look at this. Look at look where your leadership has gotten them, and look at
Yeah.
the situation we're in, kind of thing." And then Omega breaks up the tension, and she kind of comes in at that point, and announces that the underwater tunnels are there, and that they can get through since they're right conveniently, sure, but they're right underneath that one tunnel that's going to get them out to Nalase's
Wait, they're
lab.
tunnels now and not tubes?
Yeah, they called them.
I'm so confused.
Well, they went back and forth. I think they called them tubes at one point, but in this episode, and I went back and looked at the or listened, I guess, but I had the text on as well.
Mhm.
And yeah, they used the word tunnel a few times. So I don't know.
Yep.
Sure, whatever. But I thought maybe it was one of these torches versus flashlights and all that other great English language stuff we get from our friends across the pond there.
Right.
But yeah, so Tech says it's going to be hard to do, and they decide that's going to be the plan, and that's where Crosshair takes a cheap shot at all of them really, and says, "What now?" I think he says she's calling the shots now, and he's
Mhm.
right. Like, how many times have we brought up just in Star Wars in general? I think I bring it up almost every week that here we go, people are following small children around and putting their faith in small children in Star Wars. But y'all joking aside, from his perspective, like, what does she know? You know what I mean? Yeah, she's older, and that gets revealed a little bit later. But I mean, he's like, this is crazy. We are, elitists, and we're the top, the best of the best, and you should be calling these shots. And here we go. You've got somebody that's 10, 11 years old leading us and making these decisions. Like, this is exactly what's wrong with everything that's going on right here. This should not be happening.
Right, but ideas are ideas, and you're fighting for your life. So, if you have a better, and I like Hunter, if you had a
Yeah,
better idea,
step
but
up.
yeah, but he was dead silent. What else are you gonna do? You know, step up and say something or come up with a better idea rather than just being a problem. And that's all he wants to be at this point. He's not helping anything. He's along for the ride to make sure they can, because he knows his best odds of survival are to stick with the team.
Yep.
So,
Eh,
as usual, he's kind of looking out for number one, but being a pill the entire time.
Yes, and if you ever been a part of any kind of project, I don't care if it's a church project, a work project, school project,
There's always that
there's
one.
there's always this one guy who wants to just tell you how everything is going horribly wrong, and they have no solutions. They're just there to make life difficult for you. So even in Star Wars, it happens. Okay, so we have a really quick scene here where they're coming up with a plan. AZ kind of theorizes, speculates, hypothesizes that if he can cut through, he can form a seal. That way, they can drop down. It might work. There's a funny moment there where Wrecker looks at him like, "Might work? Like, what does that mean? What do you mean might?" Sure enough, it works. They drop down into the tunnels and they start making their way down that first tunnel. And this is another moment where, again, the tension, especially when the glass starts cracking, you're thinking, okay, they got to be pretty far down here. The pressure's pretty high. You've
Oh yeah.
got glass tubes breaking. Everything else is falling around them. There's at any moment some debris could just come and hit the top of one and just take that whole piece out. It's going to flood. I was expecting all of this stuff, and then throw in the fact that it's so dark and it's hard to even see what's going on. I mean, realistically, it's got to be a really creepy kind of situation to be in. But I was getting shades of like Jurassic Park episode, the second Jurassic Park, where they're on the glass and it keeps breaking and it does that whole
Mhm.
spider effect and stuff. All of that was really good stuff. I think they did a great job again of building the suspense, especially
What was
in
the
this scene.
what was the really terrible B movie? Megalodon with Jason
Oh
Statham.
yeah, yeah,
Kind of remind me of that too.
yeah. Well, there
With the
was
beast. Yeah.
no. What was that one? It wasn't Megalodon.
Yeah. I thought it was like the big,
Well, they did have
at
that
least in
movie.
the commercials or whatever, the beast that tries to break into the glass and keeps cracking it.
Yes, there was another one though that came out that had Sam Jackson and Uh, geez, why did you bring it up, Jonesy? Because now I'm gonna kill you for this one. Okay, somebody go look that up. There is another movie that came out, and I cannot. It was on the tip of my tongue. That came out where there was a big shark. No, not Jaws 3. Tawan, knock it off. Although Jaws 3, yes, that is true. There was some moments where the shark went through the glass and That's not what we're talking about. There's another movie, and I think it was with that guy you mentioned, Jason Strand, whatever his last name is.
Statham?
Yeah, dang it, I forget it. Okay, it's not important.
Mission accomplished.
Um, somebody will look this up, I'm sure. But we get to there's what is it? Crosshair wants to go back. Like in his mind, this is absolutely nuts. Why are we going down this path? He can see it. I mean, even when you're looking down the path, it looks gloomy. Like there's no light. Everything
Right.
looks like it's falling apart. Not somewhere we want to go. And so he wants to turn around. And I thought we had a lot of good dialogue right here. Like the fact that Wrecker stood up for the first time and was just straight with him is like, are you done complaining? Like he's had enough. Deep
Right.
Blue. Sorry. Look at this guy. Who is this? Or whoever this person is. Letterer 71. Thank you, because that's the movie I was thinking about. I appreciate it. I'm glad we got that cleared up. I don't know. I'll send you something. Send me an email. I'll give you a prize. But no, so there was some great dialogue because Wrecker's had enough. Like he's tired. This guy's been complaining. He's been whining the entire time. And he asks him, he's just like, we would have, we would have taken you back. He challenges him, right? After he even says, he takes a shot at him and says, what's, something on your tiny mind, Wrecker, right?
Mhm.
He's being a jerk there again. But in his mind, it's very simple. It's like, you got to come back, dude. We would have taken you back. You never came back. And I have a question about this because I don't know when he says that. If you look at the background, the other characters are all kind of looking at each other when Wrecker says, why didn't you ever come back? And I
Right.
wonder about, is it because do they feel like Crosshair had a chance, had a choice to come back? Because to me, it feels like, well, the chip's there. And they don't know the chip's been removed yet. Or did they? I'm trying to remember now if they did. Um, but either way, like he seems like he's holding them accountable for never leaving the Empire. But I don't know. It's a little fuzzy for me as to why they were all kind of looking at each other and what that meant. Whether it was, yeah, good point, or why is he bringing this up, or what? What do you think there?
Well, and by the way, it's Michael from Facebook, usually a letter that you were talking
Oh,
about
okay,
before.
cool.
Yeah. Uh, well, I think it was a very poignant question because I think we have seen, and I think look at it from Wrecker's perspective, he's seen Regs trying to escape. We saw this just from Gregor, just in the last week or two, right? When
Hmm.
they were trying to help him off. And so if you have Regs trying to do this and you have this superior ability in Crosshair, who is presumably smart enough and able enough to be able to figure it out. Again, it's all about choices, and I think even Wrecker is on board with this now. Like, you know what? Yeah, we did have a choice not to be able to come or not to choose to come back and insert ourselves to come get you. At the same time, you had a choice not to try to reach out to us and find a better way. If you really think that we're brothers and you want to give us this crap, then step up. Where's your side of it? You can't all just be, boo hoo, sad me because you left me and you didn't come back. You didn't exactly reach out. You were the one who wanted to stay, and they didn't know all the things behind all of that either. So for him just to continue to be on my horse, and I was glad it was Wrecker because, and I'm glad that each one of them, maybe not Echo so much, but but Wrecker and Tech now both giving a dose back to Crosshair, I think is really important. It's not just Hunter.
Hmm.
The issue
Yep.
is not just between Hunter and Crosshair or even Crosshair and Omega. It is really Crosshair and the entire team.
Yep.
The entire team feels this way on some level, but Crosshair doesn't want to get acknowledge any of them because, like you were saying, he's got this superiority comp, but it's with everybody on this team too. He believes he can do everything better than everybody on this team, and it's just people are done with it, and they're just
Hmm.
done with it, and they're hurt. Crosshair's hurt too, but I'm more hurt than you will ever be. You don't know my pain. It's one of those types of things, and that
Yeah.
just doesn't fly. You can't sit there and talk and listen. I'm not going to go all poetic about this, but it goes both ways, and they're just done with this crap, and I think rightfully so. We're not going to take it. You could take some of it too.
Yep. I know.
Quit calling me tiny minded, jerk.
Yeah. Although he's probably not far from the
Well,
truth.
but Wrecker's just got a more simplistic way of looking at things.
Sure thing. Yep. Hit it with a hammer. If it doesn't work, hit it harder.
That's right.
But then there's the line that you want to talk about where Tech steps in at this point.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so Tech steps in and, is saying that is his nature, Wrecker. You can't change his nature,
Hmm.
and he's always been what were the exact words? Severe
And
and unyielding.
unyielding. Yeah.
Yeah, which is total Tech, by the way. I swear he gets all the best lines.
He does.
And so when Wrecker goes away, I mean, again, Tech's just trying to get everyone not really diffuse the situation, but hey, we got to get moving. Wrecker, let this go and let's move. But then Crosshair turns to Tech and is like, "Why are you defending me?" And Crosshair gives him a terrific line back of saying, "I'm not defending you. Don't interpret my understanding of you to be something that to be my agreement with you." And I thought it was perfect. And coming from Tech is the one that makes the most sense to say something like that because he is he is the driest one out of the bunch and will give you the most calculated and truly honest question from a calculated mathematical perspective, if you will,
Right, right.
than anybody else. And Crosshair's just left dumbfounded at this response because it was absolutely right. And again, it's just perfect that it comes from Tech because there's none of the emotion that it would have with Echo. It's not the simplistic way of looking at things from a Wrecker, and it's not the emotional plus the like Big Brother versus Big Brother type of dynamic that we have with Hunter at this
Mhm.
point, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it shows a level of maturity there. I mean, I get it. Tech's character is just this way, using words like, severe, unyielding. He even the way he started that whole phrase was, "I am not." Like, let's make this clear. I am not defending you, right?
Right.
And he's just he's acknowledging that he's taking the higher road here and just saying, "Look, I don't understand. Like, I
You're
understand
you.
you,
Yeah.
but you are you, right?" And it's similar to like Lando in Solo, right? Where he says, I'm doing this, but I don't agree with it, kind of thing. Like he understands it, he's going to go through with it. It's kind of the same thing here. They're going through this whole process of with him, even though they don't really agree with his motives and his reasoning. I mean, there's none of this is really reasonable to us, right? Especially to them as a team, but he can definitely see it, and I think we can see it too. Like we've talked about this ad nauseum at this point, so we won't get into it, but just where Crosshair is right now.
But I think the one thing I really liked about it is that this is about the closest we've got to Tech having some sort of emotion. And complete credit to D. Bradley Baker. I mean, he gets credit for all of it because it's all him, but well, except for Omega, I guess, and AZ. But at this point, you could really tell there was emotion behind Tech's words.
Hmm.
But this is about as emotional as Tech gets. And he's as much describing himself as he is Crosshair because he's like, look, we're all this way.
Hmm.
Yeah, we all have our the things that we fight within each other of who we are because that's just who we are and who we've been for a very long time. And it's not an excuse. It's just saying, here's the chips on the table.
Yep.
And but yeah, it's definitely not a defense. But I like that we do finally get an inkling of emotion from Tech. And I thought it was really good to see that the Tech really does have opinions. We've seen his opinions, but he has opinions on more personal matters as well.
Yeah. No, yeah, you're right. Spot on. I mean, the emotion from him, the confrontation from everybody, it's starting to build. I mean, this is, you know, they're in the frying pan right now, right? It's a pressure
Right.
cooker or whatever. You can use several kitchen appliances here for that, but it is a pressure cooker. I mean, literally, they're under pressure, and this is not going as expected so far. And on that note, we finally get away from that scene and move into another tense scene. Thinking gooberfish the entire time.
Yeah.
But this is I was glad they did this because I was as soon as they went down that far, I thought, man, I wonder what lives like that far down below on Camino. You know there's gotta be some crazy monsters down there. And sure enough, we got a quick scene there with the monster and them running down the hallway. We've learned that the power when it's normally on, it prevents that thing from getting close to the tubes and the power's off again. Another Jurassic Park moment where the
The
fences are
fence. Yeah.
that are down, the electricity's not running. So but they thankfully make it all the way up the tunnel, thanks to AZ. He gets the power on. That's enough to turn the defense things on. The monster bites down, gets sent off, and then it shorts out everything. Although the door still opened up for them, but I don't know. Whatever. It's Star Wars
Star
for
Wars
them. So
door logic. Yep.
yeah, it stores enough energy just for one last opening, and then that was on. So, but yeah, again, a great moment. This is another tense moment. This is like the third one now. I think we've had yeah, I guess one, two, three, fourth one now by my count. I've got them all listed out here on the side.
See,
Um,
if for me, this is the one that was okay. It was a little one too many, and it was a way to slip the monster of the weekend there too, which I
yeah,
get, which is a bit of a thing at this point. But at this point, I was like, okay, can we get to where we're going? Because I want the story aspect to now come about, and we had a lot of great moments in between all of these moments, which I think is good that we were able to set the scene up, have something. resolve the scene, have a little more something in the dialogue area, and then we kind of go. But it started to be a bit too formulaic for me. I'm like, okay, let's get to the destination so we can actually come to the final challenge because we knew it was coming. You're not out of the weeds yet because you're still in the bottom of the ocean.
Right.
But like, this was for me, it was just one too many. I would have rather had the monster scene earlier if we wanted to slip the monster the weekend rather than have to go through 3, 4, 5 iterations of getting out of
Yeah.
this thing.
I mean, it wouldn't be Star Wars without something living underwater, even
Well,
as far
true.
back
No,
as like.
and it
No, I
makes
know.
total sense. Yeah, it
Sure.
makes total sense. Yeah.
I was gonna mention like all the instances of all the way back from A New Hope, right, with the
Yeah.
garbage chute and
Yeah. The
uh,
dialogue. Yeah.
yeah, Diane Hogan down there. So it's kind of a Star Wars thing, but you're right. I mean, we've seen it every time. So it was good though. I liked it. It looked different. I was worried, or was not worried, but I was wondering if it was going to be that same species or one of the same species
Yeah.
that we saw in Naboo. Which
Right.
at first, when the mouth came out, it kind of looked like that last one. And I forget the name of it, but hey, Star Wars dinosaurs. No, I'm kidding. That's a joke. That's a Project Luminous joke. We won't talk about that. So they get into Nala Se's chamber, and I think there's again, this is a scene where there's not a lot of action, but there's some really good dialogue here, and there's some things that we can probably extrapolate from this. And so Hunter, this is the first time he's seen this because obviously he was captured. He didn't come in this way, and he questions where are they? And I think Tech is the one that explains to him that this is the area in which they were all created.
Right.
And there's a clarification here that we mentioned last week. At least I think it's a clarification. I'm taking it as such, but they were mutations. They are still the Bad Batch, but then they were manipulated and enhanced. That's what he says. He says they were.
Right.
This is before we were manipulated and enhanced. So I was, and the question I think last week that we posed was, okay, were they bad, and this was just random chance that they had all these special powers, or was there some basic? It sounds like now there was just a baseline mutation that somehow they could manipulate and give them these extraordinary powers. So they were definitely bad, but they were made to have these special abilities because of that badness, if that makes any sense. So
Mhm.
that's how I took it. I don't know. Did you get a different take on that?
Not exactly what I took it. I also took it that it seems like Nala and Company would have had a fair degree of certainty that the inhibitor chip's effectiveness would be compromised over time. Now, granted, maybe they got onto the field before they could do extensive research on it. I think this also goes back to how many bad batches are there,
Hmm.
if there are more than one, because were you able to research them and then identify those attributes, or were you able to do more of an extended study over these enhancements that they were doing and what the overall effect was on the inhibitor chips in general? But it starts to also suggest that they had an idea that the likelihood that the chips would be less effective or completely nullified was a very real possibility with the with the bad batches.
Yeah. We got, I think, a hard confirmation on a theory that goes back to like I went and looked at the date when we first threw this out there. The mother theory came out around mid-May, like before May 16th.
Mhm.
But we were talking then that she was not. I didn't feel she was age accelerated at all. Like it felt like she was just kind of a natural being. And mind you, we were like 2 episodes into the whole series at that point. But
Mhm.
yeah, we got confirmation that she was not age accelerated and that she is older than them, which makes sense now at this point.
Right.
Um, I don't believe Django's aware. Like, and then this never came up, but I put it in the show notes because I started thinking more about it and thinking, okay, well, we know he wanted one particular child for his own, unaltered, and
Mhm.
that kind of thing would eventually become Boba Fett. But I don't think he knew that there is an Omega out there, and I just wonder if that's where we go. I know we've teased out Book of Boba and whether or not at some point he gets a word that she's out there. Maybe he goes after her, that kind of. I don't know if that's all going to happen at this point, but it would be interesting for Boba Fett to find out if she were still alive at any point, even now, like in the next couple seasons or years, right in the real in this timeline or later down the road. What would his response be to know that he has an unaltered sister of the same DNA as his father? Does he have a soft spot for something like that?
Maybe, yeah. I guess there's two questions: is yeah, one, does he care? And then B, or two, does he even really associate with being a clone, do you think? Because he was raised as a son
No, I
for
don't think he does.
many years. So I don't know that he even equates or even relates to being a clone at all.
No.
Because he while he was around them, it doesn't sound like he really interacted a lot with them. He was really with Django most of the time, I think.
Yeah. No, I would agree. I don't think he does. Um, just a quick check in on the mother theory. The only sticking point is that whole "You're my brother" kind of thing, right? And her acknowledging that. And the only way I could even keep, I mean, I haven't given up on the fact that she is a mother, and I'm using that quotes because I don't know how that works. It all depends on how the
I
gene
don't.
splicing and all that.
Right. I don't really know that I understand what it actually means in this type of scenario either, because it's not like she had any direct influence over their creation or.
See, and I think she did. So, well, I won't get it. So I think we talked
Yeah.
about this theory, but my theory was that the reason why they are mutated and the reason why they're able to make these clones that are special, and this goes back to something that was said in that second episode, first or second episode, when they had to get her back. They wanted her back. They wanted Omega back specifically. I mean, they sent out a bounty hunter. But to me, the theory has always been her DNA, for whatever reason, is the basis of the Bad Batch. So, and then again, maybe it's not motherly, maybe it's just sisterly. I don't. It's really not important. But the concept is they were spawned from her DNA, and her DNA is special in that she can create these enhanced or create the baseline that they can go then and genetically manipulate these clones to become the next big thing. And that's where Lama Su was coming from, right? He kept saying, we got to figure out what's going to happen here. The Empire is leaving. We need, a new special clone or whatever. That's why I think they were going after her. So
But
it
they
still
keep
could happen.
right, but they keep saying that she's a pure embodiment of the genetic code of Jango Fett. So while I that's the part that doesn't jive with me. It just doesn't line up that way because that would also suggest that okay, well, Boba is the same way, or any that first like the Gen ones are effectively the same, have the same type of genetic makeup. I mean, clearly Omega's different, right? She's clearly been tampered with in some way, but to say that she was pure, just it seems completely at odd with that. If they hadn't said that she was pure, I'd be right there with you. I think.
Hmm.
But there's just something that just doesn't line up here, and I'm just struggling to understand and see how they will if they resolve that at all, which I gotta be honest with you, at this point, seems like we won't get a lot of clarity because of everything that we've wanted more clarity on the show, very few things have we actually got it, right? Or at least at the in a way that says, "Okay, definitively, this is what it is." And again, we've been over this road before. We don't always need everything completely described and explained to us to the letter, but I think this is one of those things that it's still just confusing that she could A, be pure, but then have something unique about her, unless it's just the pure nature of that, but she's not pure. So, yeah,
Hmm.
again, it's
Well, we're
confusing. It's
never,
confusing me to try to reconcile that.
yeah. And that's I do share the opinion that I mean, I don't know if we're ever going to get like they teased. Who was it? Was it Cut that said there's always something special about them, or I can't remember what it was. He said it was Cut. Somebody said this, and I mean, I thought we were going to come out of the season thinking like a very clear, oh, Omega's good at whatever, or she was created for this purpose. And we never got that. And that's not a bad thing because we've got season 2, but it does feel like that is going to be one of those things that if we never get an answer for, and given where, the direction of things going with Lamasu taking off to this new planet, this new mountain thing, and how are they going to tie that back? Are we ever going to get the answer to that? Will be interesting to see. I don't know.
Yeah, I just put on the screen, Michael, wouldn't AZ have all the answers? I get the feeling AZ has been around since Omega was developed. And even if AZ wasn't, presumably AZ would have a lot of that information and background as to, or possibly have some of that background to be able to fill in some of the gaps. And now that presumably they'll have some extended time with AZ, I agree, Michael. I think AZ could be the one to fill in some of that story gap for. Us. So maybe I'm wrong and that we will get some of that filler information to help us make sense of the different things that we've heard about this since the beginning.
Yeah, and I think I said the only 2 people that would know, because if you think about it, all the evidence now of her background, the creation of the Bad Batch, it's all been destroyed. What
Yep.
memory, the computers were wiped. We got that right. That was a very clear
Well,
sign.
it's not destroyed; it's just with the Empire.
Well, sure, right.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a fair point. They could. I didn't think about that. They could actually go back and get it. Rogue One style, steal it. But then otherwise, there's Omega who doesn't really know. I mean, she was there when they were born, but she may not know, given her age and just need to know kind of basis whether or not how they were created or what her her purpose and special power was. But yeah, the only other people that are left are AZ, which I had not considered, and Nala Se, uh, who at least she's alive. So maybe we'll get something from that. But I think that's the only way we're going to probably find out at this point. Otherwise, everything else is gone.
Do you think that they presume that Nala is dead?
Who's they? Oh,
Bad
yeah.
Batch, yeah.
Oh, that's a good
'Cause
question.
I don't think they've ever I don't think they had any clarity around what well, maybe
She was never
Crosshair might know.
Yeah, I think Crosshair would know. That would be their only connection. Otherwise, yeah, I would think they would assume that everybody there is gone. I mean,
Yeah,
they showed up and Ton Wei was sitting there colder than a dead fish. So,
true. Well, I mean, the city was empty, so they could probably draw any kind of conclusion. I don't mean to get sidetracked. It just kind of popped in my head.
yep. All right. Okay, things are starting to get really dire. We get the first glimpse at AZ starting to run low on power. This plays out a little bit later down the road. They've got no communication. I think it's Tech or somebody says they have no way. I mean, they're kind of checking the boxes to if you're trying to poke holes in their situation here. But no communication. Air is starting to run thin, and this is where Crosshair steps in and again makes it says, hey, this is what happens when you let a kid run this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, which I agree to some extent, but he's looking at. But yeah, they
But then
didn't
the
have a lot of points.
then the kid comes up with the solution.
Yeah, and then the kid comes up with a solution. But he's looking right at Omega when he says this. Like,
Yeah.
and we talked about whether or not there was resentment here. Like, it was
Oh, yeah.
clear that he had some problems with the fact that she was a part of this team, took his spot, was a child. I mean, name it. There's a list of things that he's got a problem with when it kind of really boils down to
So
Omega.
let me challenge you on that real quick. I apologize for interrupting.
Hmm.
So do you think that he really has the problem with Omega, which I'm not disagreeing. I think there's absolutely some amount of problem with her. Or is it that he is just using anything he can to throw at Hunter to try to show Hunter, at least just knock him down a peg that his leadership is awful?
Yeah, no, I agree. He's using everything. I mean, in the last couple episodes, ever since he came in contact with him, he's using everything that goes wrong to show him why this is what they shouldn't be doing. They shouldn't be running around with a child. They shouldn't be down in the tunnels. This is all his fault. They should have just fallen in line with him and become, been part of the empire and did, these missions and went on and were good soldiers. I mean,
So
that's his
what I'm
whole
so
MO.
what I'm starting to feel is that Crosshair's real issue is that he's not the leader of the squad. Is the reason why I brought that up.
Hmm.
Because if you have so many problems with leadership, usually you start comparing, well, this is what I would do. This is the things I would take care of. And now that Crosshair's got a little of that, that flavor of leadership or of mid-level management here, he's got the the ego has come with it rather quickly. So I wondered if if he truly had resentment towards Omega, or if it really was just it was it's a way for him to just take continuous digs at Hunter, and she's just the weapon to do it with.
Yeah, I think there could be something there. I think a lot of times in those situations, you do see people try to step up and they try to insert themselves and try to take power away from whoever is in charge, and that's where you kind of get that conflict
Mhm.
of all that. And I haven't seen him do that. Right, he's not demonstrated. He seems to be just that again, that type that sits there and complains the entire time, but he's not offering up solutions. He's not doing anything other than trying to make the leader look bad. But maybe there is a point at down the road that continues that does happen. But for now, I think he's probably just one that's just emotionally torn. He's hurt. He doesn't like the fact where they are, and he's going to take every opportunity to call out they are not who they are. They are not who they are bred to be whenever he can.
Yeah. We have 2 words for this, Albert, in the industry. We call it butthurt.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's the formal business term
It
that's
is.
used
Yeah.
in
Fortune 5 companies use it daily.
corporate America. Yeah. Um, So and then yeah, so Hunter reminds him, "Hey, look, man, I know you don't like her, but yeah, she saved your life, and the Empire was trying to kill you," which is a very good point.
Yep.
He'd be dead if it were not for her.
And
Um,
arguably, she keeps saving their lives by presenting
right?
solutions.
Yeah. And this is we talked about this earlier, but this is where he gets into that whole defense of the Empire, right? It's almost like Stockholm syndrome to some extent. You know what I mean? Where he's been a part of this, and now he's trying to rationalize. Oh yeah, they're just doing what they need to do, and I would have made the same decision.
But he was treated like crap when he was there.
Yeah,
Just makes no sense. Ugh.
yeah. It's
Just you just
Stockholm
want to
syndrome.
shake them.
But yeah, they're they're just he said they were just soldiers following orders kind of thing.
Yeah.
But he makes it so, and this is where he gets real personal at this point. He says that the Republic's over, and he wants to be a part of the Galactic Empire and be part of that control. Um, and he says, Hunter, you made the wrong choice. And the first thing I thought of was Saul Guerrero saying, in the end, we all choose sides. So kind of playing off of that. Um, and Hunter comes back with all you're ever going to be is a number to them, which I thought was great because that at the at the bottom line with the clones has always been they were created as numbers and never personalities, never people, and that's where I think Hunter takes a really cheap shot or gets back at him, and probably not a cheap shot, but he's being straightforward with them and saying that look, you're fodder as well, you're expendable just like everybody else, and they're never going to see you anything more than a clone. Like the writing's on the wall, they're going to get rid of you. They're going to decommission us. They're going in line in favor of these TKs. And just because you have superpowers, just because you're an enhanced, clone of some sort, you're no different than the rest of them and us. So you are going to be replaced at some point. It's just a matter of time.
Right. And I went through when I heard that, and later, or I think it was earlier today, early yesterday. I went through. I guess it was yesterday. I went through and tried to find dialogue where anybody with the Empire had ever used anything but CT-9904, and yeah, nowhere. Not the Kaminoans, not AZ, not certainly not Rampart or any of the others. He is just a number to all of them, and
Hmm.
I mean it's spot on, right? These guys don't use their numbers at all.
Yeah, it's a
What would
good
have
point.
been
Like I
what
can't
would have been
remember.
great is I would love to hear Hunter stop calling him Crosshair at some
Call them
point.
CT-904.
Yeah,
Yeah. 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 Nobody, I'm trying to think. Yeah. No one calls, nobody on the Empire side ever said, hey,
which makes
Crosshair.
sense. I mean, they never would, but I
Right.
mean, it proves the point though.
Yeah. And
Think
that's
about it for 5 seconds.
right. And they call, I mean, TK421, why aren't you at your post? And, hey, Bob, why aren't you at your post?
Right.
Doesn't really work. Right.
Yeah. We're not all
The,
leaders like Kylo Ren.
right. Calls them first name basis. Uh, that's a great Saturday Night Live skit. The so Omega and Crosshair have their sit down. I called it sit down number two because it's kind of a mirror of the very first time they ever sat down back in the cell, right? Um, but she makes that comment about you never liked Camino, and it got me thinking about like why. And I don't know that I have a really good answer. I want to get your thoughts on why she feels like he never liked Camino and whether that was true. Does he not like Camino? Was it just the fact that the simplest answer was that when they went there, I mean, you think back to the cafeteria, where they're constantly getting in fights and he felt like he was, again, the superiority complex. It was that creeping in. But why would you think he didn't like Camino? Everybody else seemed to have some really strong memories and be fond of it, especially when you see all their faces at the very end as it's sitting there and there's that plume of smoke coming out of the ocean. All of them but Crosshair are looking at that and they're just kind of in awe and going through this whole, you know, flashbacks and thinking about everything that was what Camino was and meant to them except him. But so why did he not like Camino?
That's a good question. That's a tough one to answer because I think it could be a couple of different things. Because you would think, if anything, if he hated it that much, he would be viewing this as freedom, right? Like we were talking about earlier. You finally have the freedom. Like you are. We also heard this line earlier in the series. The Empire believing you dead has a certain amount of appeal to it. It's a big deal, and right now, all of them are dead. At least, I mean, Rampart's arrogant enough to think that they're all dead, I suppose. But, I mean, he always wants to be out in the field, I guess, if you were taking it at face value. He wants to be out in the field. He wants to be doing the work. He doesn't want to be around all these regs. They've hated the regs, since the beginning for the most part. Crosshair's opinion of them really hasn't changed at all, it doesn't seem. He certainly doesn't have a affinity for the Camino or for the Kaminoans. None of them really seem to anyway. I don't know many of the clone troopers that seem to have any kind of true affinity for any of the folks from Camino, to be honest with you.
Hmm.
We've never seen them interact positively for the most part. Maybe as children or as adolescents, maybe, uh, but yeah, I'm with you. I don't really know what the true hatred is. It's a home, maybe not their home, but it was their home to go back to. So you had somewhere to at least you had your own space, if you will, and not be in a ship the entire time. But maybe it's just what he loves doing, or he just the only thing I keep coming back to though is like, why would you? if you hate it that much, this is freedom. So do you really crave just that freedom to do what you want, and you're just afraid to embrace that and afraid to actually see what that could mean for yourself because you have no idea, and you're certainly not comfortable of, asking or telling anybody else that you feel that way and asking them how they would deal with it. And he wasn't there for Cut or any of the others that have
Yeah.
left.
Yeah, I don't have a good answer either. I'd be curious to I mean, certainly on social media or here tonight, if you guys have thoughts about what was it he didn't like or why he didn't like Kamina or why Omega felt that way, I'd be interested to hear what something
Yeah.
your thoughts and opinions are on that. I mean, maybe it's because of what it stood for. I don't know. I mean, unless he's unless he's just sick. He says it, the Republic. I mean, it's all the past. Maybe he just doesn't like the fact that it represents his past. And but she makes it present tense too. She says, "You never liked it here, right? It's not just now.
Mhm.
It's even when you were here, you didn't like it here. So why? I don't know.
Right.
Maybe there's something in that. Who knows?
I could definitely see that though, kind of that cleansing of the past, and for him it might be just that line forward. But yeah, why would the choice of words is very
Peculiar.
curious.
She says, "I want to believe it was the inhibitor chip that made you like this, but I was wrong." And I took that as okay. Well, she's taken what Tech said,
She's
right?
coming to terms with it. Yeah.
Yeah, severe and unyielding. This is just his personality, and we saw it. I mean, even if you go back, I went back and watched the very first arc that they were brought in Clone Wars, and he's no different. I mean,
Mm.
he's not a hole to them, but he's not. He's very sour and sarcastic and broody, and
He's
he
always been a
does.
jerk.
He's always been a jerk, right? He's got an air about him. He's certainly arrogant, given what he can do and that sort of thing. So, when people like that are on your side, it's kind of those are traits that sometimes can be appealing, right? We like to have those kind of people on our side. Sometimes, yeah, you don't agree with it; it's not your personality, but if if they can demonstrate they are who they are and they can back that up, yeah, they're great people to have on your team. So he wasn't any different, but I think Omega, like you said, is coming to terms with the fact that okay, yes, the inhibitor chip is there. However, that only goes so far. A lot
Right.
of what we're seeing, a lot of that personality is just kind of who he is, and she's going to have to just get over that and kind of be able to separate the 2.
Well, that's the thing. If he truly doesn't have the chip, you have no choice. You have to
Mhm.
because there's no other excuse away from it. Just is what it is, and it's good for her to be able to see it for what it is.
Yep. They, come up with a new plan. I think it was Tech's idea, but they were gonna jump into these medical tubes, and they're kind of gonna float to the top. And, Hunter brings up the question of, "Okay, all this sounds great, however, we have no way to control the
Yeah.
direction as we're floating to the top." And Crosshair, of all people, jumps in, right? This is the only time where I felt like he was contributing, and I thought, "Okay, here's a big turning moment," right? He could have easily just sat there and stewed and been a kind of a brat as he's been
Yeah.
the entire time, but
Yeah.
he
You
did
guys figure it
contribute.
out.
What's that?
Yeah, you guys figure it out.
Yeah, no,
Let's
that's how he's been the
her
entire time.
to her
Exactly.
pout.
Pouty, pouty, like a child. But yeah, he contributes and says, "Well, AZ can take him up to the top." And we don't have time to get into this, but if you go back to where AZ was first brought um, in the Clone Wars, the episode that he came in, I think it was with Fives or whatever.
Mhm.
That whole thing about it was AZ trying to learn how to fulfill his mission. Like his mission in life was to take care of people.
Mhm.
And they make it very like they never really bring that in. So if you've seen that episode, this from this point on, and AZ's determination and what his goal was to see this through, and why he delivers that last line before he dies or loses power completely, that all ties back to that episode with Fives that was in the Clone Wars. And I recommend, I would say, go back and watch that because it's a character development moment, believe it or not, for AZ. And sorry, I had to throw that in there, and I love the fact that he's going to be in season 2 because we've got another character that we're getting to see some growth and development from, and he would be a link to Fives, which I want to know what the heck's going on with that dude. So
Well, and we might get in romance in all of this. Gonky and AZ.
yeah, that'll be weird, but not any more weird than Solo. So and Lando and L3.
It
Okay,
works.
it can work. Yeah, you don't want to know.
But
So
you're right.
Omega,
It's the I'm sorry, it's the dedication to the patient. If you don't quite recall, you're his patient, and that's his mission is to make sure his patients are cared for. So that was the general idea of what
yes.
happened to Clone Wars. Yep.
Yeah, no, thank you. You eloquently put that more than I did. I was just kind of like, yeah, there's something there. Go look at it. It's cool. But no, that's exactly what it was. And he got a chance to do that. So lesson learned for him or character growth development, whatever. Reprogramming, that's fine. I'll take that too.
The AZ dissection next week.
Well, hey, you never know. I'm still waiting for that. Was it AP5 dissection? We never did that one from Rebels. No,
Yeah.
we're not going to do that one. No, I'm so sad. Okay. They're Omega and AZ set the charges. Like I was like missed opportunity. Why didn't Wrecker likes to blow things up, but they didn't give him the charger? That's fine.
Well, yeah.
They got to set the charges.
Had to cut a few seconds off the episode. It was getting a little long.
Well, true. This episode's getting a little long. Well, I was thinking too. Well, maybe it's like maybe it's remember he trained her on how to do all this and trained her on the things, and so he's passed on the little detonator and he let her do this one. I don't know.
Right.
That's probably not true either, but for
But
whatever
then again,
reason.
but it is a bit poetic though, because she's the one that has the most severe connection to Camino at this point. So
Mm,
for her to, hit the switch does have a little bit of
one
meaning
last
to it.
time.
Yeah, I think it would be if that was really it. We're the only probably the only ones thinking through this like this, but you know, that was his emotional reward to her, if you will. Of here you go, kid. You can pull the trigger on this place. Finish the job.
I'm just giggling internally because we're breaking down the clicker in this
That's right.
episode.
That's right.
Everything has meaning. Everything has purpose.
Yeah. You could
Okay.
say we're detonating the topic.
Okay. That's enough. All right. I'm going to blow to the next topic here. No, so the glass gets blown out. They float to the top, and AZ takes over. He's got his one job there to kind of navigate and steer these capsules as they're kind of getting out to the surface. And sure enough, he's sputtering the entire time. You can see that. That's again the
Right.
tension's starting to build up here, whether or not he's going to make it. This is probably where I was really on the edge of my seat the most during all of the sequence because it started with Omega because I thought, holy crap, there's no way AZ is going to be able to free her from that because it looked like that thing was humongous. And then I think, oh,
Mhm.
okay, yeah, that makes sense. He's got his little torch. Thankfully, it works underwater, and he's able to cut that off. And I'm like, okay, fine. He's back up, and they kind of give you that one quick shot so that you can see the three tubes are pretty much clear at that point. You can almost see the surface, so they were getting already close to the top. And then when he loses all his power, I mean, that scene was pretty. Again, it's more emotional, and we're talking about a droid, but it's probably more emotional when you watch that episode with Fives in the Clone Wars because, like you said, he's seeing his patient through. He's making sure that patient is going to make it through all the way to the end. And of course, for Omega, I mean, this is like her pet droid. This is her. She's grew up with him. He's been there ever since she was born. So
Probably her one friend, if you want to call him that.
exactly, yeah, exactly. Um, but yeah, to see, I mean, it's at this point, I felt like, okay, she was just going to let him go. When she jumped out, I thought, what the heck is she doing? Like, why would she go? This thing weighs a ton. There's no way she's going to bring it up to the surface. But
Right.
then I thought, okay, well, let's take a step back. Again, Omega comes off as a character that is very mature. She's making all these decisions and she's growing, that sort of thing. But she's still a kid and she is selfless and she is going to make a decision like that doesn't make any sense. Like no, I don't know that I would have. There's no way I wouldn't do it. It's a droid. Like it's not another person, but to her, she's a kid, and this is what she do. She's completely under a lot of pressure. She's clearly not thinking straight, and she's just got a lot of compassion for people and wants to save everybody. And right, it's all these beautiful things about children. So the decision makes sense from that perspective. Not so much, I don't know that an adult would do that, but it was pretty a sad line. Your path is clear. I completed my objective. And then to see her, jump in after that was just like, oh my gosh, what the heck's going on here? How is this going to turn out?
So can I ask you an unpopular question? That's
Sure.
rhetorical because I'm going to ask it anyway.
Yeah.
Is Omega too perfect?
Is she too perfect?
Because, in, like you were just saying this, she seems very mature for her age. She seems very selfless. She she's made mistakes. I don't want to say that, but is she just too pure or too perfect? If you remember, and I hate bringing this up, so I apologize. The whole Mary Sue conversation that went on a few years ago, right,
Hmm.
with Ray. And so, for whatever reason, I think something came up about Last Jedi I came across, and I just started thinking about it. And I was just wondering, as far as like what makes a character interesting, right, is the challenges they face and the different dynamics that they have to navigate. And I think I think Omega's went through some things without question, but in this episode, she kind of does everything right. Is that is she just too perfect to where we're starting to lose the interest in her character, or that what does her character need to do to grow next? To where this isn't something that she's just going to make the right decision, to where something like Crosshair's, comments are definitely become more and more true. Like she's going to give you guys all the orders because she's right all the time. She knows what to do. Why does she need you, Hunter?
Mhm.
Type of thing. Does that ever creep into your head or a concern of yours in any kind of way?
I think yes and no. Yes, it does. And if you look at it, I think where I think it becomes problematic is when they give characters all the right answers and they do everything perfect and nobody is calling them out for the things that they do make mistakes on. Because
Mhm.
even like the Ray thing, there are moments when she doesn't get things right,
Right.
clearly, but it's never really called out. And I think that's where it becomes problematic because I'll
Good
get
point.
into why it's different with Omega.
Mhm.
Otherwise, yeah, if they never call it out and she's never held responsible for making decisions, you think about poor Poe Dameron, right? He makes one bad decision and,
Oof,
I mean,
grilled.
never
Yeah.
heard the end of it, right?
Mhm.
But somebody like Ray makes a bad decision, and because it doesn't get called out, I think people latch on to that, and it's easy to not see the mistakes and just call it out for what it is. She makes no mistakes, and no one ever holds her accountable, and everything's always perfect. And then I don't agree with the whole Mary Sue thing, but that is at
Right.
the core. That is what the argument is. That's where the problem is with a character like Ray. For Omega, the reason why I think it's still they don't call it out so much here. We can see it, but I think where I give her a free pass is that she's perfect from the sense of a child. Like a lot of the decisions, a lot of the things she says, the things that she does are very sweet, they're very innocent, and I'm not patronizing her in any way. It's just we got to remember that she is a kid, and if you have children, they tend to see everything half full. They always see the good in people. They always want to make friends. They always want to be everything that we've over time and over the course of our life have come to not believe in sometimes, right?
Mhm.
And because she says these things and does them as a kid, um, we expect some things to go well and we expect some things not to go well. Her jumping out of that tube was a dumb, horrible decision. She made a mistake. And had Hunter not been the person, I'm sorry, Crosshair had not been, I keep doing that every episode. If Crosshair had not been the person to step in and save her because no one else was. I mean, I would expect Hunter at some point was just going to jump in the water. It looked like he was ready to go. But had Crosshair not done that, what would have been the course there? Like she would have probably let go instinctively at some point, or worse, she would have just been held on to him until she just died, drowned.
Mhm.
But even at that point, had she let go once they got to a certain point, she would have not had enough air to make it to the top. I mean, she would have drowned either way. I mean, she was already going to die. So from that perspective, I think she did make a very, very bad decision. You could argue some of the decisions that she made were bad throughout the episode, but they didn't have any other choice. And so,
Mhm.
you know, is it a bad decision? Yeah. Is it
Right.
the only decision? Yeah. Right. There really weren't other options there for them. So
Yeah.
I don't know if I did a good job explaining it, but that's where I think it's different for Omega, at least for me. That's where I think it's different with Omega, and there's probably more allowance for her to make these things and have come across as a perfect character because where she's coming from is something that we just don't have in us sometimes anymore as adults.
I like the explanation actually, and I think when we talk about virtue and could someone just be that pure and virtuous all the time? And I like the way you put it because as you said it, it started to click into place for me that a lot of times kids ask, "Well, why wouldn't you do that?"
Hmm.
And something it's as simple as that. Of this is what you keep telling me to do, or this is the things that we want to see. Well, why don't you just do it then?
Right.
And it's so she just kind of puts her money where their mouth is most of the time. And again, you're right. Sometimes it's pretty stupid and foolhardy, and it makes no sense because there is no way that it does. But it also gives other people the opportunity to then do the right thing or do something that maybe they know they should do or they should care a little bit more. Because, like you said, it's just a droid, right? They come and go. You could salvage it later, so on
Right.
and so forth. But it means something to her, so why not?
Hmm.
If something meant that much to you, would you if there was a stuffed animal that got dropped behind you and it was your kid's favorite animal, would you go back and put yourself at risk to go get that because it means so much? Well,
No.
maybe, maybe not. It depends on how much risk you're doing, right?
Right, yeah.
If it
I'm
meant
not
if
going
it
back into a raging fire in the house, right, because the kid's crying because there are toys in there. I'm like, "Sorry,
right, right.
it's not worth
But
it."
if it means losing 5 minutes on your road trip or something, okay, well, maybe because I'm gonna have the kid crying the entire time. But anyway, but I like the way you put it though, and it's just, the idea of being virtuous all the time, whereas I like how you view it as more of a, this is just the way she wants to see the world, and the way that she does see the world, so why wouldn't she behave this way? It would make less sense for her not to see it that way or for her not to do these things because, again, why not?
Yeah. It's, Yoda's quote of truly what is it? Wonderful, amazing, the mind of a
Yeah,
child is.
right.
Um, okay, well, thankfully, Crosshair, steps up, and I when he put that gun up, it looked like he was I mean, they did it intentionally, right?
Yeah.
He puts a rifle up to his head, and I'm thinking, "What is happening now? This guy is completely gone, bananas."
Mhm.
And, saves her. It was a pretty good moment, and I thought, "Okay, well, this is a big turn," but then I immediately thought, "Well, he's probably just gonna say he's returning the favor," and sure enough, as soon as they bring her up and they bring up AZ, I mean, he just slouches down back into his little corner there on that tube and is kinda like,
Mhm.
pouting all over again the entire time, so, but it was good. I did feel like this was a pretty tense moment, and this was several moments in the episode where certain characters were I wasn't sure if they were going to make it, especially Omega. Like they almost kind of signaling like this was going to be the end of her. And or when Az when he powered down, I thought, oh crap, there was somebody on the Twitter poll that said Az was going to die, and I
Mhm.
thought, well, I'm gonna have to give her credit because she called it.
Right.
But yeah, I would have let
Not
him sink.
today.
Today is not that day.
Don't you die on me.
They okay, well they paddle away and we get the big scene right at the very end here where they
Yeah.
come up. I have not had a chance to I mean, it's been pretty busy this weekend, but I've not had a chance to see if anybody has a good theory as to why there's daylight now on Camino. And I started thinking, okay, well, maybe there just was from time to time and we never got to see it. Was there something about, the fact the way Camino was built that somehow altered, the weather patterns and such that it was always rainy or do we always just get there on the rainy days and all that? But I mean, there was a lot of symbolism there too, right? I mean, I threw up the quote of, Leia from The Last Jedi about just because you didn't see the sun doesn't mean it's there and you lose hope, paraphrasing, of course.
Right.
Um, there was certainly that. And, but yeah, I mean, I think it signifies it is a new day. This felt like when you see that and we get that shot of that kind of that final shot of them, the establishing shot and then the final shot of them all standing there, it was kind of like, this is the end of the prequel era officially at this point. We are now full on into the era of the rebellion, right? The reign of the empire, and eventually the rebellion itself. But it was a very very cool shot. I really liked how realistic it looked.
Yeah.
But then just seeing their expressions, like you watch Omega's face, and she's constantly you can see her brow falling down. I mean, you can just see they're all going through tons of emotions, tons of memories, feelings. Not seeing that, I mean, it's got to just be jarring not to see the horizon like that, or see the horizons as such, and it just be gone, right?
Right.
I mean, they can still see it, I'm sure. But what were your thoughts as they kind of gave us a shot that's kind of behind me here?
I liked it. I mean, it can't rain all the time, right? I think it'd be unreasonable to think it rains all the time. But you're right. It's that symbolism that we look for, and I hadn't really thought about it in that way until I think you had tweeted it, or maybe it was in Discord where you had said that it really signifies the beginning of a new time or the end of the old days,
Hmm.
basically. And I like that. I think that's probably pretty accurate here. The if you look at it from the empire's perspective, I think it's definitely true. Right? We have completely now what we're getting really close to completely cutting ties with everything that was the build up to the empire. We've still got this clone problem that's kind of out there that's serving a purpose with War Mantle, but we have completely decimated the research facilities and everything else on Camino to where we think this is a non-issue, and we have cleansed that part of our past. And now it's time to move things forward another step and another. And again, when you're able finally to kill that part of the past, if you will, it's definitely it feels like a new day. And I think
Hmm.
the Empire is probably doesn't actually feel that way, but at the same time, I think it is definitely a delineation point where you could say this is definitely the mark that signifies this is the true end of the Republic and the Clone Wars and everything from here on out. We are now in truly into the beginning of the Age of Rebellion, and that lead up to the Age of Rebellion, at the very least.
Yep, I agree 100%. It was very cool. I enjoyed the
Yeah.
shot. And I loved her line. She's like, "It's all gone." Like, and that's exactly what we were thinking the entire time it was
Yeah,
happening. It's
we
like
literally wiped it off the surface at the very least, right?
in true
Yeah,
empire form, right? In imperial
yeah.
form, which is great. There is one. I know there were some questions, especially the when immediately after the episode aired. A lot of folks were like, "What? They're just they left him there. How's he going to get off that place?" Well, if you listen, Tech mentions that we got to get out of here before the Imperial scouts come through. So if you're wondering how Crosshair gets off that platform in the middle of nowhere with no food, water, or anything else, but it's either likely they turn around and pick him up, which I don't think is going to happen. There's probably an Imperial scout that's going to pick him up and take him off, which could be problematic. It all depends on where this goes, and we'll talk about there at the
Yeah.
very end.
I don't understand why they just didn't, like, chloroform him or something and take him with them and drop him off somewhere else to where he couldn't get back to the Empire that quickly, because if they get him, then they know they're alive,
hmm
and the whole point of being dead is completely, it's pointless.
and that's we've been talking about it ever since Rex made that comment. We've been speculating that something was going to happen at the end of this season that would put them in the same position or put them in that same scenario that Rex was talking about. There's a lot of benefits, again, paraphrasing, but there are a lot of benefits to having the Empire think you're dead. And I agree. I think at this point, the Empire does think they're dead. However, should they pick up Crosshair, I think the Empire is still going to. I don't think he's going to tell them. I don't believe that he's going to tell the Empire that they're still around. I
Why not?
know because I think there's something happened there for him where my stance on Crosshair was that he was going to come out of this season not really at if he didn't go through a redemption arc, he was not going to be okay with the Bad Batch, but he wasn't going to be okay with the Empire, like almost in a neutral position at this point. I think because he has that air of superiority, I think because he sees now that they did try to kill him, even though he doesn't want to admit it to them. I think he's going to see that he's going to stick with the Empire for as long as he needs to, but I don't know that he's going to become the right hand man kind of thing. I still think there's good in him. Otherwise, I don't think he would have saved Omega and AZ. Although he says it was returning the favor, which yes, on the surface it very much was him just returning the favor, but he didn't have to. Especially if he had all that if he really does resent her and has animosity towards her or just who she is or what she represents in filling his role or being part of that team, he could have easily not taken the shot and just let her drown, die, and been done with it. So there's something that feels like there is some good in him still, at least. I do want him to be redeemed and for him to go back and tell the Empire that, yeah, they're still around. I think it complicates things. And it also, honestly, gets in the way of my headcanon of them going down to level 1313 on Coruscant and getting into the underground, underworld of Star Wars. But those are my thoughts. But what do you think?
I agree. I mean, I have to do it, like, at least once a week, I think I do the same thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
I yeah, and part of it was I wondered if Crosshair also had this moment of, it's not necessarily that he has a problem with Omega, he's got a problem with Hunter,
hmm
and to keep going back to it's really just anything to dig at Hunter, and to save the kid, it's not always the kid's fault that she's in the position and maybe had that, but yeah, I'm with you, it's really confusing. It goes back to the Empire, because it doesn't really seem like he's all that dissatisfied with the Empire even at this point. Now, I'd like to think that he's got things rolling around in his head. He seems to be thinking about a lot. He's
mm
just a man of very few words.
Few words, yeah.
Yeah, but so I mean, you would like to think that, but again, if he's waiting to get picked up, is that really what he wants to go back to? I mean, he can't be this dense, right? Or is he? That wasn't rhetorical. That was I was looking for an answer.
Michael says if he tells the Empire the true story, he may not be trusted because of his ties to the Bad Batch. Well, yeah, and I don't think he was trusted either. Like, if
Oh,
you think
does he
about,
know that? But does he know that?
hmm, yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, that's the other question: is does he really think, or does he know enough to where he knows that he really cannot go back to the Empire? Because if he does, he's on a very, very short leash at best. But in reality, it's probably just going to be there to I mean, if I were Rampart in this situation, I was an evil person, I'd probably just torture him for everything he knew.
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
because what other value does he really have for you if you really can't trust him? And
Hmm.
clearly they don't. So just do what you do, Empire, and just get what you want out of one, the torture droid.
Yep.
I mean, it's harsh, but I mean, if the shoe fits.
It does. It fits really well. There's a quick moment there where Wrecker like turns and was like, "Hey, you coming along?" And I love it because we've been talking about Wrecker being like
Yeah,
this kid and
still
so
give him a
quick,
chance.
yeah, so quick to just be like, "Hey, we're good. Why don't you come with us? I know we've been through a lot." And he makes it very clear that nothing's changed for them. And Hunter basically says, "Look, we want different things
Yeah, it's a great line.
in that, but they don't have to be enemies." And so the question comes to me is like, okay, what does Hunter want versus what does Crosshair want? And it feels like they just want purpose. That's the common thing, right? Hunter wants to be able to go. I mean, yes, he's got the responsibilities as a squad leader. He wants to see Omega safe and all that. But at the end of the day, they need to figure out what their next role is. They've got to choose a side. They've got to choose a role in this because they're not, clones anymore. They're not part of the Republic Army. The same thing with Crosshair. He's not there either. So what is his? What does he want? He wants to be a part of something as much as they do. And they're on two different sides of that right now. Um, but I don't know how you could be not enemies. You know what I'm saying? Like, unless
Well,
one of
I
them
don't.
goes independent.
Well, I don't view Hunter as wanting to join the rebellion at this point.
No,
I
no,
don't.
I
I
don't
don't
think so either. But he
yes, I
wants
don't know that.
purpose. What are they going to do?
Well, I think
They
Hunter. I think Hunter believes he has purpose. So I think you're right. I think in that regard, I think they both want stability. They want that level of knowing what the next day brings, and they have value and they have purpose to it. But I don't know that it's a with Hunter. It's not doing the right thing. I think at this point, I think it's like you've said a number of times. It's just it's protecting his family and really making sure the family is safe and secure in all the ways that that means.
like he wants to be cut in that aspect, right? Not literally, but that's what Cut was doing.
Right? Yeah. Well, and again, he's like the patriarch matriarch of the family, right? I've
Hmm.
got to do whatever I can to make sure my people are good. Right, and those that's what's it's a matter of what's most important to them is that and this is the difference, right, of what they don't want is the same thing, is that Hunter wants what's best for the squad, whereas Crosshair wants just what's best for Crosshair, right, and that's the differences of what they want. They both wanna be happy, but their vision of happiness is truly very, very different, and it's not really happiness for Crosshair, I think it's just more of comfort for him.
Yep. He'd make a great bounty hunter at some point. um,
I mean, that's one way we could go,
yeah. I mean, if he
and
does declare his
we have a
independence,
right, we have a War of the Bounty Hunter series going on right now, so you never know.
right, or he could
Maybe
become Dengar, like a lot of people were speculating. No, I'm kidding.
oh,
He's not.
please, no.
He's got to put a few pounds on and become Dengar.
I'm forever damaged by what Robot Chicken has done to Dengar, which is hilarious, by the way, but I can never see Dengar the same.
Robot Chicken did a lot for a lot of the characters in Star
Oh,
Wars,
especially
but
Alpha.
him in particular,
Yeah.
and Emperor Palpatine.
Oh,
Yo, what's up? Okay.
I like where this is going.
So there's if you go back and watch that episode again when he says this changes nothing, and they're all kind of standing there. Like I love the fact that when they're exchanging that whole thing about, hey, we both want the same things, we don't need to be enemies. We want different things, we don't need to be enemies.
Mhm.
And Crosshair gives nothing, and he just stands there with his arms folded, head turned away. Like the look that Tech gives him, like he's looking right at Crosshair, and he's the first one to leave. Like he's so done with it. You can tell he's just like, whatever, I'm getting out of here. He turns around and goes, and then Wrecker sees Tech leave, and so he just kind of falls in line. And at that point, they all kind of leave. But I love the fact that Tech's just it's so black and white. It's like, why are we here? We're not. Why are we wasting time on this guy? Let's get out of here. We got to get out of here, kind of thing.
Well, I mean, yeah, he already said his piece about it. He is
Yep.
what he is.
He's
Why do we keep wanting to give him more chances? I like that but I do like that the team they still show Crosshair that they want him there. You are a part of this family. Regardless of where we're at, we can still fix things. Like they still, even though they may have a hard time believing it at this point, it's what they still want as much as Crosshair wants it. They just can't be within the same construct.
mhm. There's we get the I guess the repeat scene of both Crosshair and Omega standing there. I
I
love
like
that she
I like that
looks
she thanks
down.
him. Yeah.
What's that?
I like that she thanks him.
Well, yeah, and even before, well, I was gonna say right before she does, she's looking. She looks down. She looks up. Her eyes look right at it, like you can hear her. You can hear it in her mind thinking, "I'm gonna take one final look, and I'm gonna walk away and never turn
Mm.
around." And of course, she turns around to talk to Crosshair, but she does look up one last time, and then she turns and leaves. Turns around to thank him, and then we get the line of, "You're still my brother, Crosshair, or you're
Their
still
brother.
their brother. You're my brother too."
Yeah.
I wish they would have hung on that end just a little bit longer, or had her show like her, not necessarily, she shouldn't need to cry, but just having a little bit more emotion there. 'Cause I think that is, given that she was there from the birth. And I started thinking too, like, what if there were scenes like someone needs to draw her as a young kid and holding these babies that, Nala has got them in cribs, you know what I'm saying? And like she was rocking them at night and stuff, as because if she was around and she was old enough, you put the baby in the older kid's arms, and you take the pictures, and you let them hold them and all that stuff. And I wonder if she ever did any of that stuff, which I think would be really cool, if that
That
happened.
would
But
be so out of character, though, for the Kaminoans
well,
to have any kind of affection.
but Nala Say, I mean, Nala
Mm,
Say, you think
no,
so too? Like she seems like
no.
I think she's like the motherly person. She loved her like a mother as a daughter.
Mm, I don't think the Kaminoans are capable of actually exhibiting affection. Maybe that's a better way of putting it, and
Okay.
definitely not in a physical manner.
Yes.
So yeah,
No, I'll
I
give you
think that
that.
would be.
They
I think it would
are.
be very. These would be very out of character for the Kaminoans to allow any kind of influence because they are still specimens. And again, if this is now, let's say 5, 6, 7, 8 years previous, she's probably still a little colder than she was, now. She's probably changed quite a bit. But
Yeah, I think she's different. I think she is a motherly figure. I see her as, even if she doesn't exhibit those behaviors that we would expect, the fact that she went through such great lengths to ensure that she was safe, and also sent another bounty hunter after her to save her from the bounty hunter that was already chasing her down. That just seems like it's more than just an asset. It's more than just a specimen. It feels like she is emotionally tied to her, and if she's emotionally tied to her, to some extent, she's got to be emotionally tied to the Bad Batch. But again,
well,
that's just me.
at this moment, yes, but maybe not 6 years ago.
Look at that right there.
Oh,
There's
I
your.
know, and TJ's in there agreeing with her. This is ridiculous. All these people are turning their backs on me.
I agree with Stephanie. Says Omega would have snuck in and held the babies. So,
I
all
don't know.
right, we're really getting into some stuff here. Okay, so the problem that I had with this episode, and I've voiced a couple different opinions. I've had time to sleep on it, but the issue I had was the fact that they just left him. Now I get it. At some point, I think the lesson here, or what they were trying to signal, was at some point you can only go so far. I think Tawan said it really good in Discord the other night when we were doing this. Like, they did give him many opportunities, many chances, to allow him to come over to them. Even gives him that line, "Look, we're giving you the chance here, like you gave us, right? We're turning the favor." And he turns it down. And at some point, the argument is, at some point you can only go so far, and you've got to let people be who they are. I personally can't see that. Like, I had a really big problem, and I'm still kind of hung up on this because, as far as I'm concerned, and my brother's here with me right now, as far as I'm concerned, family's family. And yes, you have people in your family you don't like, unless you have people that are in your family that don't want to be a part of the family, and all of that. But at some point, and this is Star Wars world, like, you have to just grab them by the throat and say, "I love you. I'm doing this for you." And I have a problem with the fact they just left him. Like you said, they should have chloroformed him. They should have taken him hostage, hit him with a stun gun, whatever it is, threw his butt in there and said, "Look, you're not going over there. You can go do whatever you want to do. We're going to lock you up. We're going to have a big intervention." But if they truly are family,
A banner and everything.
exactly, I'm not going to turn my back on my family. I don't care who they are. And I get it. I mean, every situation is different. I don't want to bring in all these there's tons of scenarios where it becomes very toxic and you can't do that and that sort of thing. But I don't know. It didn't sit well with me. Like, everything they had gone through, all the hard work, and the fact that Crosshair was literally signaling to them, "You guys turn your back on me." They had an opportunity to not do it, and they didn't take advantage of it. They decided to go with "Oh, well, screw him, I guess." Again, he doesn't want to come with us. he's not in the right headspace. He's clearly screwed either by the chip or the fact that he's got all these other problems that have nothing to do with the chip that they created to some extent, right or wrong, they did. They're not taking any. It feels like they would have just picked him up again. I don't. I have a problem with it, and that was the only negative thing I had about the show, and the fact that it didn't really have that big climactic ending. I can't rationalize leaving your family members behind, even if they don't want to come with you, especially in Star Wars when you've got a blaster you can set to stun. So that's my piece.
Well, I don't want to
But
start a fight, but he's he's still a grown ass man. I mean, he's still
doesn't.
at
No.
at what point do you let people make decisions on their own? And you just and they have to live with it. Now, I mean, I'm with you. I set the stun, knock him out. We'll talk about this later when we've had a chance to cool off. You know, clearly
Yeah.
you're a little damaged from this traumatic experience. Nothing from anything else, just this traumatic experience. But I think at the same time, I mean, it's clear they're not making any headway. I think is maybe where they're at. And again, we're giving them perhaps far too much credit for being emotionally mature in any kind of way, really for any of
Right.
them,
No, I agree.
including the kid,
Agree.
right? None of them are emotionally mature in any kind of way. Some are much further along that path than others, but they're not capable of having adult conversations and having and speaking some truths to one another and actually hearing the message, right?
Yeah.
so
Yep.
to expect that at this point with them, now granted, it would be in character for them to just say, "All right, well, screw this, blam, you're
Yep.
coming with us, let's roll," and we'll figure it out later. I'm with you. I would have liked that. This is much more dramatic, I think, and gives us a lot more openness to where we go next. However, so
Yes.
I
Like
think that
it's yeah,
story
but
wise, it makes more sense to go this way, if a bit inconsistent with maybe how our characters really feel if they could get out of their own way.
yes, there are in Star Wars in general, there are a lot of decisions that are made that I think, where the heck is this coming from? Like, yeah, no rational person would have made this decision, but that doesn't really make for the best drama. It doesn't make for a lot of excitement at times and that sort of things. I completely get that. So otherwise, yeah. So I think he'll be back, obviously in season two.
Think so?
Question, yeah, I
Oh,
think he will.
running
You
out
know,
of limb there, buddy.
yeah, I know, man. Sorry, this is why you come to the show. Um, so
I
I
guess
don't want.
you saved me a new poll for the week.
I
Is
did.
Crosser
We'll
gonna be
cross
in
every
season 2?
back. Yeah, I shouldn't even do this because I'm just encouraging. My brother says Albert once left me in the middle of a cornfield and starting to sing the Children of the Corn song. So it's true. I did leave him in the middle of a cornfield, lost, and started humming the theme to Children of the Corn just to traumatize him. So
That is messed up.
I'm telling you, it's a
I
dark
think you
place.
just completely undercut your own argument here.
Right. Exactly. Family first kind of argument. No, not necessarily.
Wow.
Not when cornfields are involved and the ability to traumatize your younger brother. Okay, so um, we get that final scene, and this is again will be the basis of the Patreon episode. We're going to get into what that mountain was and where they possibly could be going there. We're going to pull in a lot of Heir of the Empire stuff, so hopefully you've had a chance to read that whole saga because there's quite a few things in there, as well
We'll
as more
pause the
recent
show
stuff.
right now. We'll wait.
Exactly. Go read all three books because you're going to need to here in just a little bit. Um, but it was, I mean, the scientist coming out with that uniform and the patch, that was definitely signaling, oh, look, here's that same uniform you saw in The Mandalorian. This all ties to stuff that we've speculated around, excuse me, The Mandalorian, and why they needed the Grogu's blood in season one, to give us credit. We were talking, it was likely something to do with midichlorians, or sorry, genetics. Although I have a theory about midichlorians, but that's a whole nother thing. But certainly genetics were involved in why they were so interested in capturing and taking all of the tech, right? They're just a big conglomerate that are absorbing by willful force these smaller companies and taking advantage of their tech, right? This seems like real world kind of stuff here. Um, but yeah, I think I think some of this will play out. The question I have for you though is, are we going to see kind of like this volley back and forth between these shows where now we're going to get something in season two of Mandalorian or something in the book of Boba that's going to tie back to things that may have happened in season one of the Bad Batch that we just kind of brushed off as filler? Is there any, do you think there's anything there? And if so, what?
It's hard to say with Book of Boba, but I think with Mandalorian, it's very possible because we got a heavy dose of it for a couple of episodes, 2, 3 episodes in season 2. So it would not surprise me if they did pick up on that and we did trade Easter eggs, if you will. between the shows. Book of Boba has the same opportunity. I think there's some other shows too that are coming down later on that can still continue to pick some of that up too, because we don't really know much about Rangers of the New Republic or a couple of these other shows that might still drop little, hints in what the Republic finds and whatnot as well.
Yeah.
So, which I like it. I think that's something that would keep things interesting, and again, it gives you that interest in going back and looking at things. Now, I have to say this though: the question I actually had was, does the Empire have a team of design artists that go around making patches for all of for all of their divisions? And why the hell would they continue
Yeah.
to at least
Use that same thing.
draw in resources from the predecessors when they're clearly intent on wiping that out? So,
I
either
don't know.
someone has a very sick sense of humor, or the Empire's I don't know,
Lazy?
yeah, but I guess
They need a
yeah, they're
better marketing or logo design team that they just mailed it
right,
in. It's like, yeah, we'll just adopt that. It says Camino. Everybody knows it means
yeah,
Camino.
yeah.
We
So
buried it, but
yeah, don't
yeah,
worry, no one, yeah, people will forget what it actually means here after it's time. It's all good.
yeah.
But
But the planet doesn't exist, remember?
well, that was before this.
Well, yeah. Yeah, it was a joke. But yeah, I don't know. I don't I mean, it is a good funny question about why they would rehash that so many years later. But I mean, it's for the obvious reason. It's easier to kind of direct or call those direct parallels to what's
Oh,
going on and
well, if you want
fill
to
in the
take the fun
blanks.
out of it, sure. If you want to be Jonesy about it, go ahead.
Yeah, take the fun out of everything.
Yeah, I feel like we've reversed roles here.
Right. But yeah, the Empire has big plans for you. That was great. And then just Nala Say's look on her face, right? She looks doomed. Like she looks really sad. She knows what they're,
Lost, yeah, she's
yeah,
scared.
exactly what's coming in.
I don't know why. I mean, she said they're big admirers of her. So what could go wrong?
Yeah, what could go wrong?
I mean, Llama Sue's been put to pasture, so you've got freedom, right?
Yep.
Totally, it'll never happen to you. We'd like you.
Yeah, sure. Nothing. Yeah, you'll be fine. They're gonna get everything they need from her, and then she's done too, right? Train.
I wonder how long Kamino's lifespan is.
Maybe she's still alive when we get to you know
Yeah, we've
future
had to
shows.
speculate before. Yeah.
Um, okay, so yeah, definite significant connection to the Mandalorian at the very end here, and it just kind of ends on that note. And we'll get into a lot of speculation. I'm going to bring up Snoke.
Oh,
We'll talk about Palpatine, and yeah, kind of where all that's going in the Patreon show. So look forward to that if you guys are Patreon members. Even at the $2 level, you'll be able to listen to that.
yep.
So it'll be fun. Okay, final thoughts. We're at 2 hours and 7 minutes, but I figured as much. I think Tawan said it was going to be a 2 hour show, and so he was pretty much spot on there. But where does Crosshair go from here? And does he have a chip? Do we care at this point whether or not he has a chip?
I think it's pretty well established he probably does not have a chip, or I mean, he's told us we don't. We didn't really revisit it again, so we'll
He just
take him at
holds his
face
head
value.
2 times though in this episode.
It is curious, and again, some of it might just well, maybe he's just having an emotional crisis at this point.
He's got migraines as a
He's
result.
got a midlife crisis at 6 or 7 years
Oh,
old. It's a tough time to be a clone,
and
but
I'm not making fun of people with migraines. I'm just saying, like, it would be comical if it wasn't really that, and it turned out to be he's just got high
yeah,
blood pressure or something.
he's not used to seeing the sun. It's understandable,
Yeah.
but
I mean, he did hold his head twice, and it seems like they keep throwing that out there like, okay, there's a chip here, there's not. I don't know. I don't apart from what he said, we don't have a definitive answer as to whether or not the chip was removed. So, take him
right.
at face value at this point that it has been removed, which again becomes much more powerful because, it's not that's controlling it. It's truly him and his emotions and what he feels and all that. So, I think there's more power, more weight there.
But I
Um,
mean, yeah, I mean, where he goes, I mean, clearly about the only ones who know where to find him or that they could find him would be the Empire. Because again, they're probably going to go back and scout and make sure the job was done, especially now that they got daylight for the first time in a century. So
mhm.
they have the opportunity to go back there and make sure everything truly was done. And they see this platform that might draw some conclusions there anyway, because presumably they just didn't know the platform was there, just off, about a mile and a half in the distance. There's not a great range of sight on the Venator, I guess. Probably don't have a lot of windows. But
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, so they're gonna find out. I what I hope with season 2, I mean, maybe lead in a little bit of speculation about season 2, but I hope we don't get back into is this again, this chasing back and forth type of thing. I mean, it's bound to happen because we need some excitement and we need action and things like that. But I don't I get worried that we might get a rehash of season 1 because really we're right back where we were as of episode 2 of season 1, if you think about it. So I get a little concerned, like what's coming next. I don't know what to expect coming next because we'll have to learn more about where Crosshair's at. If is he really going to let this go? Is he really going to protect his brothers or sister, I guess, or is he
Yeah.
really going to be like, no, this is the way I feel. There is no coming back. I have to be with them at all costs, even if it means effectively signing their death warrant too.
Yeah, I think if he tells the Empire they're still alive, then the question becomes, okay, so what is the motive for the Empire at that point to go after Omega and the clones? Because at this point they have, well, I
Well,
have a theory.
they're still a threat, right? Because we saw this with Clone Wars when Rex and them trained Saw Gerrera. We saw how effective that was. And if you have highly trained and skilled troops with, especially with special abilities, if they are able to train any kind of rebel force or guerrilla force, that force presumably could get much stronger and much more
Yeah,
difficult to contend with, even if the Empire doesn't really think a whole lot about many of them right now. Like clearly, Saw Gerrera is on their radar.
yeah.
So others will continue to, there will be other uprisings at some point. So you want to eliminate the opportunity for these things to take place and for these training opportunities to be there in the first place.
Well, no, good point. And even on the surface, right? As you were saying that, I'm thinking, yep, you're right. Even still, like these are not your normal clones. These are
Right.
enhanced. I mean, they're a force in their own, right? So yeah, they're. I would probably try to wipe them out. But I guess if what I'm saying, where I was going with is if Crosshair does indeed tell them, hey, they're still alive, I feels like we're going to get back into the whole cat and mouse thing again, which I don't
Yeah.
know if I really am with you. I don't know if I kind of want that.
When again, the Empire still doesn't seem to have any interest in Omega at all. They really
Right, that was all Nala
don't.
say and Lamasu.
Yeah, they really don't seem to care whatsoever about her. So I
Hmm.
don't know that there's anything there beyond, again, Crosshair's vendetta against the team and the threat that they pose. I don't know what else there would be to it at this moment in time, unless they start teaming up with Rex and company. And I guess the other question is though, what kind of time leap forward do we get?
Yeah. But they have a lot of I mean, they could easily come back and say, okay, it's been 5 years and now Omega's 18 years old or 16 years old or whatever, plus five, whatever that is, or maybe even later. I don't know. I mean, there's a limited amount of runway before they get into the Rebel Alliance and what that means. And now you've
Oh yeah.
got, you're going to have scenarios where it's only going to be likely that they're going to have to just be a part of it once they get to that era, right? There's still stuff that they can do now and still be independent of Saw Gerrera, still be independent of the growing rebellion, Enfys Nest, all of that stuff is still kind of is still really starting to it's an infancy right now.
Mm.
But yeah, at some point you're going to have to just come to grips and face the fact that if they go too far in the future, then they're going to be crossing streams there, and that gets kind of messy given how much we know about the rebellion, or they're maybe they're doing co-op missions, or they get into the Andor series at some point and they're part of Fulcrum in some way.
Yeah, and we could take some inspiration from what they did with Rebels. They didn't jump too far in the future between seasons. Man, but we saw what they did with the maturity of Ezra and just the
Yeah,
way that
season 2 to 3,
yeah,
and
the
then 3 to 4.
entire team was just in a very different place, after some of those events and the characters' demeanors and not just their appearance, but their demeanors and their attitudes and their interests and objectives all evolved. And
Hmm.
I think you don't need a whole lot of time to do that. Just a couple of years, even just a year to 3 years, I think is enough to really say the team's in a very different place. And again, that would give us a lot of opportunity to things to uncover of what has gone on in the meantime, especially if they've either been on the run or if they've just not heard anything from Crosshair in a long period of time. I think it would be interesting to see if we didn't hear anything from Crosshair for a year, or the team didn't hear anything from Crosshair for a year, what they truly think about one another. Is it really they've been looking and just haven't found them, or what's going to be that set of circumstances that brings them back together? And then what does that look like when you've been truly disconnected from each other for an extended period of time with no kind of confrontation?
Yeah. Like having him disconnected from the Empire would be interesting, especially if he goes down the mercenary role or a bounty hunter role, and he's in direct conflict with the stuff that Rex is doing with the Martez sisters, or even if they're still working for Sid and he's interfering with stuff and they're crossing paths, no pun intended, that way. That would be kind of interesting, and we'd get away from the Empire. But the Empire has to be there, right? There has to be this they control everything, they run everything at this point. They've got to be involved in some way, but I'm with you. I don't know that I want them constantly chasing after them at this point. So I don't know where
If I
that
were the Empire with
goes.
Crosshair, What I want to put him like, I saw Suicide Squad not recent, all that recently, or rather recently. Goodness gracious!
Hmm.
And he could be one of those types where they just put him in the worst situations and see what happens. Because if they lose him, eh,
So what?
okay,
Yeah.
yeah, they served his purpose. He's really effective, but if he gets killed, no big deal. We'll just continue on like we have been, but we'll use him for as long as we've got him. And I could see them maybe going to that route. They don't really care, but he's just effectively a merc for hire, that kind of bounty hunter role, but he's on the payroll of the Empire.
Yep. The Dead Batch or something like that.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Okay. Well, for hour 3, I thought we'd get into. I'm kidding. I think that's all we got.
The Children of the Corn dissection.
Children of
You and
the Corn.
Alejandro is a
I don't know if he's
mysterious childhood here.
still on here. He's going to start spewing more terrible things about me. But overall, again, season 1, I think it certainly went out with a bang. I kind of wish there would have been something like really big at the very end. Didn't have to
Yeah.
be. They did. I think they did a good job. I know there was a lot of criticism about the filler episodes and a lot of the placing of these. Some of these episodes felt subject. I mean, certainly questionable, and we talked through all of that. So, and all of that now seems. I feel better about a lot of it. A lot of it makes more sense given that we officially have a season 2. So I almost going to guarantee you, just like we saw in The Mandalorian, we're going to come back to some of the stuff from season 1. It's going to come back. It's what they do. It's the formula. It's been working for them. And my big hope, and again, what we'll get into with Patreon, is that we do have, I'm going to call it a Marvel Universe kind of event coming, but it feels like the places, again, tinfoil hat stuff, but there are certain things that are starting to happen and starting to take form and shape where they could easily turn this into and we know there's one coming. They said it right in the big announcement. There is an event coming, and to what scale we've talked about, but um,
But we believe
there's
that
some stuff that's going on.
mostly to be Mandalorian, Book of Boba, Rangers of the New Republic, though, right?
Yes, yeah,
That
those
seems
those in particular. I don't
that
think it's Kenobi or I mean, there could be little like mentions of stuff, but I don't see them playing like
those 3
Kenobi's
make
got its
so
own
much.
story. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
those 3 make sense because they're all happening at the exact same time.
Right.
Well, we don't know much about Book of Boba, but presumably it's his journey now.
Sure.
Yep.
Yeah, so there's but yeah, it does feel like there's the makings are all here for something big to happen. And whether or not they have the guts to do it or the bravery to do it or all that, I guess will be determined.
But this is where it's fun, right? Because these are like you said, these are the things where these become the Easter eggs that we pull on down the road that now we can draw more from and then try to make more context to it. And hopefully the folks who haven't seen all of that or put all that together, that's what we're here for.
Right.
So congratulations, Albert. We'll keep you around for another season.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
We've extended your contract. Congratulations.
We have big plans for you, as as to coin a phrase.
Yeah, don't worry about the blindfold we're putting on you as we take you out to your new location.
Yeah, it's totally fine.
It's all gonna be fine.
Yep. So thanks everybody for hanging around. We've had a pretty good, sustainable group that's been here for the better part of 2.25 hours now.
Yeah.
But special thank you to everyone, like all the regulars are here, and I know we call you out every week, but we had some new folks like John MacArthur, Ryman 6000 was in here.
The sports guys, yeah.
Yeah, Sports 101 Gaming.
Yeah.
I'll check that up at the channel. But Risk, Tuan, Steph, my brother.
Michael, TJ, yeah, all the
Yep.
usual suspects. Of course, we love you guys. We appreciate you coming out and supporting the show. Again, if you want to, I don't know that we'll have to see what's going on for next week with the Rising Storm coverage as we start that. But live streams are always on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch, usually Sunday evening. So come out and see us. It's all over our social media, so we'll post that out there, and there's reminders and all that. So go check out those and hit the little bell for notifications, all that good stuff, of course, and you'll be notified. Like Albert said, we've got the Patreon content coming next, where we're going to dig in everything not suspicious, goodness, mounting speculation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Albert's back in true form again. So again, we're going to talk about Mount Tannis. We're going to talk about what this might mean for NLSA, all the connections back to Heir of the Empire, and what all that might mean for us as we get forward. Tinfoil hats not included, but we will leave a schematic for you to design your own so you can tune in when the episode is released.
And I have a lot of stuff to show that I got this week.
Oh yeah, that's right. We continue the loot box openings effectively. Albert's trinkets and doodads.
My
Part
desk
3.
is full of stuff. It's so full of stuff. So
Yeah, so we will promise not to take up more than 40 minutes of the time. Just
Yeah, no, it's not going to happen. There'll be at least 30 minutes worth of show and tell stuff, including this guy right here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we'll see what that looks like.
All right, patreon.com/the Cantina Cast. We appreciate you guys coming out and supporting us, all the new guys and gals showing up. We really do appreciate it. eaglemedia.com/Discord if you want to check out and be part of the conversation. Again, we've got a lot of great activity going on right there. We've had a lot of new members coming to check us out. So thank you for giving us a chance out there. Again, lots of great shows on Eagle Media. Congratulations to Ron over on the Screen Podcast, but also Film Appraisers, Barrel House Podcast, Petticoats and Poppies. Who else am I missing? Goodness.
Manny Faces.
No, yeah, Manny Faces in the Basement. You should go check those two out from a year plus ago. Yeah. But anyway, lots of great shows on the network. You can see those all on Discord. eaglemedia.com if you want to get samples of everything. All of our episodes are on there across everyone. Other folks are doing lots of other great bonus content too. So please go check them out. They're all producing fantastic stuff.
Yep. Please support all the other shows as well.
Yes.
All right. Well, and thank you to all our Patreon members. One final thing. I had a problem with the credits. I have all the names in there, but it couldn't load a particular image. So unfortunately,
excuse
every week. I know. It sounds terrible, but this time I mean it. I really had a problem with this. I'll get it fixed. I'll get everybody on there.
You were just like Han Solo.
It's not my fault. It's not my fault. Okay.
They told me they fixed it.
They told me they fixed it. They really did. All right. We'll see you guys next week.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.